Hey everyone's Classic DM, and today I thought we'd do something really special. It's a brand new year, and last year we did tons and tons of content for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, building on our roots that we did from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And in 2020, we're going to go back and do a lot more Advanced Dungeons and Dragons stuff and kind of move away a little bit from the Pathfinder 2nd Edition because I want to really make sure that people get a chance to see the magic of the original game. And one of the first things I thought we would do was take the Indigo Oasis adventure I wrote as a Pathfinder compatible, which is completely free, and do a conversion to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons using pre-generated characters from the Hidden Shrine of Tomoashan to give you an insight as to how you can just take a basic adventure and its theme and modify the skill level and difficulty to fit pre-generated characters. So if you wanted to get some new players to come play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons with you, you could just grab these kind of complete pieces and parts that are everywhere and create something really magical and fun for your friends to play, even if you just have one friend. So today's video is going to use a little bit different format than we use usually. What we're going to do is we're going to have a combination of an actual play session with me controlling both the characters and the DM. I'm also going to be walking through you, kind of breaking the third wall, like how would you take this one section and convert it, what's important, what's not important, and talking you through all the individual details of everything you need to know. So when you get done watching a video or you scrub through it and find the sections that you want, you've got a good sense of like, how can I take some cool module that I love with a really great theme? How can I get some pre-generated characters? Get my friend to come over and play this cool themed adventure? How to really run it? How some of my house rules work. This is a real important part of the entire channel. I used tons and tons of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons house rules to make the game more fun. We started playing the game when we were kids, right? So to make the game more fun was really, really, really important to us. We weren't as critically, freaked out about using the rules as written because a lot of the original rules written were designed kind of from a wargaming era, and the first edition of first Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was really quite different. So let's go back to this Indigo Oasis, which I've got here on the right. And what we're going to do, before I go too far, we're going to use these pre-generated characters here from the Hidden Shrine of Tomoashan. If you don't remember them, I'll just give you a quick little overview again, right? So we have this level 6 fighter, neutral good. He's just using a longsword, and nothing really magical about it at all. He has a composite short bow in the Hidden Shrine of Tomoashan, which is originally a tournament adventure. The characters, they're not super powerful. They don't have tons of hit points. This is that character just copied and pasted into my little generic streamlined character record, which you can get a copy of on my Patreon page if you like the way it looks. And I have another video that explains like how I did the little character pictures in Black Desert Online, stuff like that. So the second character we have in that group is this Care the Apprentice. The first guy's name was Riali the Wanderer. He's like a level 5 magic user, level 7 thief. So this is another not super epic, powerful character. If you watch my Steadying of the Hill Giant Chief or the Glacial Wrath of Frost Giant Jarl, we have this party of 7 epic, complete walking ways of destruction. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to use these kind of quasi-gimpy, old-school characters and see what we can do with them to modify the difficulty level in the Indigo Oasis with them by the book, kind of statistically. But we're going to modify things, all my house rules, to make sure things work really fun. And we're going to get rid of all the Pathfinder 2e stuff that's in the original adventure and convert it all over to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in some ways using some Osric stuff. Because this isn't being published and sold for free. This is just for fun. So you're just getting the video recording today for fun. I might do a proper conversion to Osric at a later date if you're interested in it. Let me know in the comments if you're keen on getting an Osric version of this to run for yourself because you don't want it to do all the work. So the last character in that group is the cleric. The cleric is Mira the Disgrace. She's just a level 7 lawful neutral cleric. Their backstories are really interesting. I have another video that talks about the whole backstory of the Hidden Shrine of Tomoashan. So before we go any further, let's just talk real quickly about that. Now you can see this map here in the background for the western part of the world of Greyhawk. And down here at the bottom right-hand corner, right above where my name is, you see where it says Savages. That's the Medio Jungle. So the Hidden Shrine of Tomoashan's kind of in that area. So let's go take the characters from there before they went to the Hidden Shrine of Tomoashan, and let's decide that instead of fleeing from the people chasing them from the hold of the Sea Princes, that they boogied over the Hell Furnaces mountains and they found some small little oasis camp, and they've decided to kind of flee off into the Sea of Dust, into the desert. And maybe there's some kind of promise, maybe one of the relatives is there, but for whatever reason, the three of them have decided that we're going to go west. There's a place of safe haven. They'll never follow us there. and maybe we'll be able to start our lives all the way back over again. So right off the bat, what we're doing is we're taking some of the ideas behind the Indigo Oasis and converting them to work for 3 new characters, which as a DM is super duper important. Let's get those ambient backtracks out of the way. So what I want to do is I want to walk through real quickly. If you've never seen the Indigo Oasis stuff, grab a free copy of it right now. You can follow along. Some of the stuff in here has been modified because we converted over to AD&D using Ozark Open License. So this adventure is really designed with a basic premise of your adventures are traveling west in a desert for whatever reason. So that's what we're going to use here today, right? We're going to have these 3 characters here, right? We're going to have the fighter, Rial the Wanderer, Care the Apprentice, the Magic User Thief, and Mira the Disgraced, the Cleric. All 3 of them are kind of ganged up together as an impromptu, party, and they're going to travel to the west, trying to escape whatever's chasing them. These bad people chasing them. So we're going to use the original Indigo Oasis adventure as that place that's going to happen to them, using the same themes and everything. So this design of this adventure was really written to be an ebook, right? So it has all kinds of hyperlinks in it to videos, and if you download a copy of it, you can find all these video links yourself. One quick thing to remember is that stuff you read to the players in a sand color, stuff written in light green is stuff you want to paraphrase to the players. So you're going to kind of see like how I would run it for some other people in AD&D, which is actually a lot more fun than doing it in Pathfinder, to tell you the truth. And this is kind of a one-shot. You could get someone to play the game, pre-generate these characters and print them up, and have like your girlfriend or your wife or your roommate or your buddy or your kid come 14-year-old kid or whatever come play this in an afternoon, because the themes are pretty universal. But if you're really interested in all the backstory and everything, I've got 2 videos up on YouTube that talk about where the design comes from, and I draw the maps in real time because I got a freehand map. Let's go ahead and get to the structure and narrative part here. We're not going to run through the whole thing in detail. We're going to get right to the gameplay session. We're going to play this whole thing live for you, just like we did with the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl and the Steading Hill Giant Chief. So besides some of the philosophical, front end information I have in the module, because it's designed to be written as a freestanding element, we need to get right to the point here. So, as I said a moment ago, the Indigo Oasis begins with the party traveling with a camel caravan on a 2-week journey across the endless dunes of a desert reminiscent of North Africa's Sahara. Hey, look at that. The Sea of Dust, western part of Greyhawk. Perfect, right? That's all we need. The reason for the trip's up to you. Okay, in this situation, we decided that the 3 characters that are from the Hidden Shrine of Timoashan, these 3 you can see peeking up behind, Rial the Wanderer, Care the Apprentice, and Mira the Disgrace. They're just trying to escape some bounty hunters. So they're going to go from point A to point B. Now, if you see the backdrop map here in the background, let's just get the other stuff by the way so you can see it again real quick. Let's just assume, pick one of these volcanic eruption places and say there's some kind of small village there, and they're going to head all the way across the Sea of Dust, and their goal is to go to somewhere else. They're not going to go to the ruins to the north. They're not looking to go to the Forgotten City. Maybe there's somewhere on the other side of the mountain range. They're just going to cross this massive desert. And their game plan is that if we can cross that massive desert, no one will be able to chase us. No one will catch us. So that's how the adventure starts, right? So what else do we need to do this kind of adventure? Well, we're going to need this, we need our little board here. Let's get rid of the tabletop camera. Let's get the full board up. So we got this full board up. We got some pen. We got some paper. We got tons of dice over here all over the place. We're going to need some miniatures, right? So why don't we just use these 3 pre-generated miniatures here to represent our characters. We'll just get a little close-up of them. So let's get these sleeves rolled up since we're going to have some fun now, right? So we've got these really horribly painted miniatures I used before in the past, and one of them's unpainted. So we'll just use this one here, even though it's a druid from the Glacial Rift of the Hill Giant, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl and the Steading Hill Giant Chief and all the other videos. We'll just use her because it's a female to represent the Mira the Disgrace. That way we can just quickly eyeball the blonde hair and say, hey, it's the cleric, all right? So we're going to use her for that. We'll use this large, huge barbarian, which used to be Varenjar in my other series, to represent this guy. So we used a giant class from Black Desert Online to kind of build the character portrait. So we'll use that. So it'll be really easy at a pinch to take a quick glimpse and see what this character is. Now, if you're going to get super picky about what characters are equipping and what miniatures are using, you're a real war gamer, you realize these characters aren't holding these things in their hands, right? The barbarian's using a longsword, and it has a composite bow as a backup weapon. You'll see the cleric using a mace or a quarterstaff. So if you want to be really, really picky, you just find a miniature that works for you. So, and we could use tokens, right? We could have used our tokens for the stuff too that have the same kind of character portraits on it, but we decided just to use miniatures to keep it more 3-dimensional for you. Now for the rogue guy, for Care the Apprentice, don't really have a great miniature to represent him, so we're just going to use this WizKid guy here, this little dual-wielding fighter. May have a little bit more fidelity because it has such a horrible paint job on it. So that's going to be our stars. These are our 3 characters. Okay? So now that we got that established, we'll just set them aside. And what else do we need to figure out ahead of time? Well, one thing that's really important to do anytime you're running any kind of adventure as a DM is you're going to need to have kind of a copy of what those character sheets are. Now, since we're doing this electronically, we already have a quick copy of it. But one thing I like to do is I like to make a quick little to hit AC 0, AC roll to hit type thing that I can keep separate. So these are little post-it notes that you can get from Office Depot or wherever. They have sticky on the back of it. So we're just going to do it this way. So we're just going to call this fighter, and we'll do this. Let's do this with the zoomed in camera so you can see it upside down because that's much more compelling, right? So we're gonna have our fighter, and they're gonna have our cleric, and we're just gonna call it the thief, even though he's a thief magic user. And I just want to get a basic idea of what it's gonna take to hit these guys. So I'm gonna put an AC, and I'm gonna put a hit point number here. That way, as I'm playing the game, I can write their hit points and scratch out below, and their AC number will stay the same. So let's just start from the top here. What we got for the fighter? So he's an AC 5. Okay, that's good. And his hit points are what, 58 or something? Okay, so he's 58. And what's our cleric? We got him out of order. Let's just do the cleric next. AC 4 hit points 48. AC 4 hit points 48. And then we got our thief next, because he looks like a thief. He doesn't look like a magic user, does he? So you're going to give him an AC 5 and hit points 43. So in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, this armor class level, these characters that you see right here, this is all kind of like scale mail kind of armor class. Let's pull up a quick peek at the player's handbook. You're going to need a copy of the player's handbook, a PDF version. You're going to want to have get kind of familiar with the armor class numbers. In AD&D, if you're an old player, you already know this. I'll give people a quick little rundown here, converting from another game. Armor class goes from 10, which means wearing nothing, like wearing a shirt or a robe, all the way to negative 10, which is something like a demon or devil would have. So the armor class numbers are a combination of the physical armor you're wearing, and maybe you're like a dexterity ability to evade being hit, like how mobile you are and dodging and things like that, kind of like a mitigation number. And also includes things like shields and parry, and they can be magical things and rings of protection, all that kind of stuff. So what we want to do is let's go down to the, let's see, character races, character classes, armor. Okay, so in the section on armor, here's the armor class thing right here. It's maybe a little blurry for you, but it's on page 36 of the player's handbook. So you can see they have an armor class rating thing right here, right? So this is where you get those armor class numbers from. So in AD&D, you're rolling a D20 to hit, and one thing very different than in 3rd edition of 3.5 and 3.0 and Pathfinder 1, Pathfinder 2, and AD&D 4 and AD&D 5 and all these other editions, the armor class numbers don't really grow, and the rolls to hit don't really grow. Even though you get higher level, you don't get like an additional attack bonus. What makes you hit better is more magical items. So there may be, you don't have, your statistics don't grow. You may gain dexterity from getting some kind of ring of dexterity, but you're not going to be a level 20 thief might have the same starting dexterity as a level 1 thief. So with that in mind, the characters are much more grounded in terms of their character power. It's not like World of Warcraft. You're not like a level 20 paladin with 25,000 health versus a level 1 paladin with 250 health. That doesn't happen in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So with the armor class ratings, it's kind of the same thing. So in this case, if you look at the chart here on the right, it's a little bit blurry. I can make it a little bit bigger. If you look at the table here on the right hand side, let's just pan that over a little bit for you. If we can do that, there we go. Actually, this is going to flip by page. Let me just flip this back to, let me just resize this a little bit so you can see it better. There we go. So armor class 5 is normally like scale mail plus shield or chain mail. So our chainmail plus shield is AC 4. So you can see the fighter's armor class is kind of as if he had scale mail on. The cleric's armor class is kind of as if she had chainmail and a shield and that kind of stuff. So having that player's handbook on hand is really handy when you're going to play. Another thing you want to have on hand is the Dungeon Master screen, or this page also appears in the Dungeon Master's guide, because all the rolls to hit are going to happen on a chart like a war game. So in this case, you see the first chart in upper left-hand corner is for clerics, druids, and monks. Upper right-hand corner is for magic users and illusionists. The lower left-hand corner is fighters, paladins, rangers, and bards. And then you have a matrix for thieves and assassins. So in our party, with our characters, the warrior is going, or the fighter is going to attack on the fighter table. So what we do is we figured out ahead of time what his to hit AC 0 number is, which includes all bonuses that he might have. So in this case, his bonuses, he has strength, which gives him a +1 bonus to hit. So to hit AC 0, he needs a 15. That's pretty strong. Yes, in the sense that it takes a lot to do it. It's not super powerful. So let's take it this way. If you're rolling a d20, right? Let's get some d20s out here. You got a bunch of d20s. Every one of those numbers kind of represents a 5% chance. If you take 100 and divide it by 20, it's like 5%. So in many ways, it's kind of like saying if you roll a 5, that's like 25% out of after 100. So I guess if you were to roll the d20 100 times, the odds of you getting 5 or less is 25%. But someone who's a math major, you could probably correct me on that. So you want to have high bonus numbers to hit when you're playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but the usually bonuses to hit themselves aren't very high. What's really driving your ability to hit something is this table. Now what does happen is your chance to hit increases as you get in different level brackets. So it's not every single level. You're not getting an attack bonus for every level. You're gaining a better chance to hit because as you're playing this class, that overall class's ability to hit becomes better and better. Okay, so for example, let's take a look at this guy here, right? So he's level 6 fighter, so you would look him up over here. You say he falls into level 4 to 6 range for cleric. Oh, excuse me, we need a fighter table down here. So he's level 6, so he hits in the level 5 to 6 range of fighters. So his chance to hit is the same as if he was level 5. To hit AC 0, he would need a 16. But when you notice in his character sheet, we've got that down to 15. Now why is that? Because of his strength. So that strength gives him an additional bonus to hit. When you look in the player's handbook, when you're rolling a character up, you'll notice that when you look at the strength value, besides the minimums and maximums, when you have a strength value that's the same as his, which is 17, you gain not only a chance to hit probability, you also gain a damage adjustment. You do additional damage. So all those things are taken into consideration and figured out ahead of time in the character sheets, which is nice subtleties to have if you want to play this. So all you got to do is get a copy of the Hidden Shrine of Tomoeshan, right, and get this character right here, pull this out of nowhere, and you've got like a level 6 fighter you can work with just a few basic items. Now we're going to keep this up in the background, but this is where those characters come from. These characters here, Ryle the Wanderer, Care the Apprentice, Mirror the Disgrace, come from the tournament version of the Hidden Shrine of Tomoeshan from the characters that are in the as a pre-generated characters from that. Let's flip here. So here you go. There's Ryle the Wanderer, all his stats, all his bonuses. Now there's things he has in here like potions of climbing and stuff. We'll refer to that when we get into gameplay if we need to. But for the most part, we're going to play the Indigo Oasis with things being kind of rudimentary and basic, as if new players are playing. Meaning they're just going to attack, they're trying to defend, then try to move around. There's not any attack of opportunity. Nothing like that's happening. So it's really important for you to try to consider using pre-generated characters, and I actually don't think you should ever use level 1 characters when you're playing with someone new. When you're playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, what you want is characters that have some abilities, can do some things, can weather the storm, can take a few hits, because the hit point numbers the characters have at low level are quite low. So you'll notice if you're playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, a level 1 warrior in that game has a ton of health. In fact, I got some character sheets right here. Let me pull them up for you. See if I can get those out real quick here without wasting too much of your time. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Let's just put these over here. Just give you a comparison, because the characters in Pathfinder are tremendously more powerful. And what I'm going to do, I'll remove this camera out of the way. Let's go back to the overhead view. So here's some Pathfinder characters. This is a Paladin, right? What's her strength? It's like 16. Her modifier is +3. It's a lot higher than it would be in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Where's her health number on here? Hit points 20. So she's got 20 hit points as a level 1. So she almost has half as many hit points as the level 6 fighter does in our game. And even like the magic users and the illusionists and stuff like that, this is a level 1 wizard, Ezran. He has 16 hit points. Now, it's not over the top. It's not 160 or something like that. Even Amiri, the barbarian, she's kicking the game off with 22 hit points. So these other versions of the game, this is the cleric here, this is the Kira character, Kyra, whatever you're going to say it, 16 hit points. This Lem guy, the little bard, 15 hit points. If you're a level 1 fighter, you probably have between 4 and 10 hit points. You're not going to have that many hit points. So the hit point numbers in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons are tremendously less. Okay? So you get those pre-generated characters. You kind of understand where the numbers come from. If you want to roll new characters from scratch, I actually recommend you use some pre-generated characters. Make them like level 5. So let the characters roll for the additional hit points. This is where I want to talk about a house rule. One thing I think is a lot more fun, but we're not doing it today. I think it's a lot more fun to give characters max hit points. And here's why. Let's say that say someone's using a longsword, right? Let's just put this guy here. This guy's using a longsword, and he's taking a swipe at this guy here, right? Let's say he's level 1, he's level 1. Let's say this is a level 1 thief. And by the book, the level 1 thief has between 1 and 6 hit points. Let's just say when you roll the character up, he has 5 hit points. So we'll call the thief equals 5. And let's say this is a fighter. They start off with up to 10 hit points. Let's say he rolled hit points, only had 2. Okay? So say the thief rolled a hit, and he landed a hit on the guy. So say he rolled an 18, he landed a hit, he hits the guy with a short sword, and he rolls a 1d6 damage for that. He rolls 2 damage, and that fighter is now dead. So this is the kind of thing in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in the very early phases. It's kind of tricky because the damage numbers at low levels are really, really, really lethal in comparison to how many hit points a character has. So you have 2 ways to approach this. The first thing you could do is when you're making a character, you could just give characters max hit points, which is kind of what they're doing in Pathfinder 2nd Edition these days, really, to tell you the truth. You could give them max hit points. Let's just write that over here for you. So you could just max their hit points. If you do that, I also recommend you max the enemy hit points, because that will mean longer fights, more tactical things happening. The other thing you could do, depending upon how difficult and how strong your player base is you can max player hit points, but have variable hit point levels for the enemies. Let's give you an example of that real quick, okay? I got a copy of my Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan module right here, and let's just pull out part of that, right? What we're going to do is we're going to show you how. So here's Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan, right? The original version from a long time ago. Let's just find an enemy in here, okay? Okay, here we go. Hallway of the Ancestors. So once the lead character in the party reaches the midway point in the corridor, 15 zombies will animate and attack. Armor class 8, hit dice 2. Now when they say hit dice in AD&D, they mean number of 8-sided dice for health. So if you were a zombie, you would roll for their health. If you're pre-generating zombies to be in your adventure, they would have 2. In this case, like a zombie would have 13 hit points. When the old AD&D ones, they actually sometimes either tell you a fixed number for all the zombies. In this case, they say 9, and they tell you how much damage they do. They're doing like 1 to 2 claw and attacking 2 times around and stuff like that. So the original version of the game, sometimes you'll find where there's a lot of enemies at once, the hit point numbers will vary tremendously. You may have a situation with just one enemy, obviously just have 1 hit point number. Here we go, there's a nest of fire beetles, hit points, and they may say like the numbers like 7, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2. So they're trying to create some variety, so not all the fire beetles are all running around with a fixed block of hit points. The idea in the first version of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was not to create a fixed block of hit points, but for new players playing and who haven't played before, you may find that maxing out the hit points for the players is a lot more fun while they're learning the game. If they all die in the first 2 minutes, they're not going to have any fun. It's just the truth. They're really not going to have any fun. It's an advanced kind of a game to play, and you don't want to go out and break out the basic version for them to play. You want them to have fun almost right away. All right, let's go back to our actual adventure here. All right, and we'll just get this. We'll go back to the character sheets in the background. So we have our characters that want to travel to the west. We're going to pull this overhead camera off. In the background, you can see the Sea of Dust map. So the caravan's heading west. The caravan leader is Abdul Hamid, is your party's guide, well versed in the route. He's a simple desert dweller accompanied by 2 of his brothers. Okay, so we got some characters. We got this battle map. Your players are ready to play. Here's the miniatures that we picked for your friends that are playing. We decided to use this guy to represent the rogue, and we need 2 other guys. So let's just use let's see here. What could we use to represent these guys? I tell you what we'll do. we'll just use these three. We use these three unpainted miniatures here to represent the guys that are in the caravan. Let's just throw that on the table in the background. So we'll have these three guys here represent the characters that you're interacting with, right? Let's put this like this so you can actually see it. Okay, so here's your party, and here's these dudes here. There's no map or anything drawn yet. So these three guys are going to take you on this journey. So the three have done this trip 10 times a year for the last 30 years, which essentially involves loading up with water and food in your first 5 days, stopping for 2 days at some oasis, and then continuing on the final leg on 5 days to some location. Now the names of this one here are left over from Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but we're converting this to AD&D, so you get to kind of see it behind the scenes. So every party member is going to have a camel. It's very traditional. These guys are in traditional indigo, blue dyed desert robes. They guide everyone what to do. They don't really speak any language. So if you're playing this session, what would you do? So what you'd want to do, you've got this behind the scenes we talked about before. You would want to do something like this. You kind of want to create kind of an impromptu map. So let's just do, since we're not really at a scale where we're having any kind of tactical combat, we don't really need a 5-inch grid. We could just use this. Right? So we're just going to turn this little low overhead camera off. Turn this camera off. We'll move this out of the way. And let's just make up something, right? We don't even need the grid. In fact, we could put a grid down. Let's put a grid down. I'll tell you what we'll do. I've got an extra grid board right here. Here's a grid board right here. We'll put this grid board down. And we'll get this one out of the way. We got the other grid from the actual map for later on. And we'll just keep this blank board for doing sketches of stuff. Here we go. All right. Then we can just draw on this plexiglass and put our characters on the field. So one of the things that's going to happen anytime you're running an adventure in the very first time is people are going to try to push the boundaries, trying to figure out what they can do. So in this case, let's just say there's a big tent. Here's a big tent here. We'll just draw it as this big X like this to kind of imply that here's the roof and here's maybe the entrance to the tent. Big campfire type thing happening here where last night's food was made, and maybe over here is like a big hitching post, and over here is all the camels. So we can just put some markers down here to represent. Here's camels 1, camel 2, 3, 4. Here's some camels here. We'll put another hitching post over here. Just draw some kind of square. We'll put some these little stupid childlike refrigerator magnets, right? You don't need to have to go out and buy a camel mini unless you're really hardcore. And here's a little oasis, and here's where the guys are sleeping, and here's their stuff and their chest, their goods, and their backpack, and all their stuff, right? And where are our dudes at? So here's our guys that are they're getting ready the camels. Here's your party. There's the warrior, the fighter. I always say warrior. Here's the three of you hanging around. You just got ate breakfast. These guys are here getting ready. These camels ready. And this guy here is going to come over and talk to you. Let's say this guy's the main guy. He's telling you what's going on, but he doesn't speak really common or English, what you want to say. So, and you're going to head west. So let's just say in the situation that this is north. So north is going to be to the top for you watching it on YouTube video. So this is north, right? So when you have this kind of situation, the game table, this is where I'm speaking to you as a DM. You could just make this up. You could just say, okay, well, you're kind of at this oasis, and it's got some dunes that kind of go like this, and maybe there's a well. Maybe there's a little square well over here. That's where everyone gets water, loaded up all the water. There's no like pond or anything. And there's no other people here. It's just an encampment. These things are tied out with little stakes or something. And here's like a big palm tree up above. Just put some chicken scratch down, represent your palm tree. So everyone gets the freaking idea, right? Pardon my language. So there you are. So the players are a lot of times going to want to go try and talk to people and figure out what to do if you create this kind of scaled down macro space. So I would call this kind of like macro gameplay, micro gameplay. So what you really want to do is you want to get the players traveling, but it's okay to this gives them a chance to like talk to the other characters if they really want to role play. If they don't want to role play, that's fine. Don't force players to role play. You may want to establish that these guys that you've hired to do this trip don't really speak English, right? Or common, whatever you want to say. So we established this in the module. Limit responses to players and character questions, smiles and nods and dialogue such as yes and not good, this very bad, we go now, sleep now. So if your players are playing the session, they haven't played D&D before, they don't really know what to do. They might be like, do I pretend I'm the character and start acting like this silly Critical Role game or this Knights of Everspam or whatever it's called? I mean, a lot of people don't do that. We never did that. We weren't actors. If I wanted to be an actor, I wouldn't be playing D&D. But you can do things like this, okay? So say you're playing, let's say you're playing the cleric, okay? Your girlfriend's playing the cleric. Let's get her down here. We'll just hide this panel here. She's like, okay, well, I want to go over and talk to these guys and get an idea like how long they think the trip will take. Like maybe you as a DM, you forgot to tell them that. So she's like, you could say, oh, I want to go talk to this guy. He turns at you and he smiles and kind of nods his head. He's like doing something, tying knots with ropes or whatever. And she's like, oh, I want to ask him like, how long of the trip? And he holds up some fingers, say 2, just 2. And he like 2 days or 2, and he like points at the sky, like moon come up, moon come down, and then hold up a number of fingers. And so you can do this kind of like these two can't communicate. If you've never been to a foreign country, sometimes you have to do this kind of silly stuff, unless you got your Lonely Planet language guide in your back pocket. So that's what you want to have happen as the DM running this kind of situation. And there's a reason for this. First of all, you don't want the adventure to be 2 weeks of village shopping. You want people to kind of get on with it. And by having these guys being well versed in this trip, it's like if you go do a charter boat fishing, right? The guys on the charter boat aren't your friends. They get paid, take you deep sea fishing, bring you back home. Guys that move and pack up your house, they're not your friends. They're going to pack up your stuff. They're going to move. People that do these kind of jobs, they're not your friends. They're not going to sit there and talk to you. Some people are social. They'll chat around a lot. Some people are not. Let's put our little desk camera on here so we can see what that looks like, right? So you're sitting here. Let's put it over here. You can see what she's doing. So she's over here chatting away to this character, trying to get some information. As a DM, you kind of can give them back third-party information to the same degree that they would ask it. Like, oh, I go up to the caravan guy, I go up to the caravan leader and try to communicate with him and try to get an idea. Do I need to summon any water for the trip? And he's like, doesn't understand. He seems to pick up the word water, and he points at the well, which already have water, and he's already got water skins. And the DM, you could tell the players are like, well, it looks like all the camels have been loaded up with water already, enough water to last you almost a month, it seems. So, or 2 weeks. So you kind of want the players' investigative ideas to be rewarded with answers or pieces of information. So in this case, talking to this first guy, when these guys' brothers are talking to the caravan leader, might let the player understand that I don't need to start casting, create water, which is one of the spells memorized. A lot of time players are going to do this. They're going to want to look at the character sheet. They got it in their hand, man. They're like, oh man, I got this character. I'm going to do something cool. Should I cast augury? Because, if you look in the book, in the player's handbook, you start looking up all the spells, spell explanations, cleric spells. Let's go down to augury, right? Where is that? Level, here it is. Augury. The cleric casting an augury spell seeks to divine whether an action in the immediate future will be for the benefit or harmful to the party. Wow, that's nasty. So, that's okay. What you need to do is you can kind of tell the young player or the new players, in a circumstance like this, everything seems relatively normal. I mean, your instincts as a cleric, you've been doing this a long time. It's just telling you that this isn't really a situation of impending danger or major threat, that you would normally not really want to cast augury right now because it requires a lot of time and energy to do this, and it doesn't really seem like there's going to be any surprises. So that can kind of help calm your player down. You're not telling them exactly, you don't need to do that. You're not doing that. Instead, you're kind of letting them know by educating them, how when you're playing a cleric, you may want to save that when it's do we go left or do we go right in the dungeon or something like that. So that's one thing that may happen. You may find characters that are playing this magic user character, right? Let's go to the Care of the Apprentice. They start looking at their thief abilities. Like, oh, I want to, pick pockets or open locks or find their move traps, move silently, hide in shadows, picking pockets. Well, this guy's over here mustering with I'm going to try to hide in shadows. I want to sneak up and pick this guy's pocket. Here's how you handle that. We have to do this in multiplayer games, MMOs, and game design all the time. You don't really want that happening because in reality, if you went up to try to pick this guy's pocket, and he's like, what are you doing? If he doesn't detect it, you might steal something out of his pocket. The player might think that this is a great opportunity to do this. It's okay to do that if you want to. In fact, let's just do a check for that right now. This guy is, if you see right here, Care of the Apprentice has a 65% chance to pick pockets. Now he has to hide in shadows and move silently before he can even do that. So let's pull this camera over here a little closer so you can see this situation, right? So here's the thief, and here's the dude that he wants to pick his pocket, right? And he's just over here about these 3 silly things with the camel. So he's going to have to hide in shadows first. That's HS. So it's also the middle of the day. 48% chance to hide in shadows. Now in D&D, you'll have to do a lot of things called percentile rolls, and you'll want to have dice that look like this. This is the 10s, this is a 1s. So if I roll that, what is that number? 51. What about this one? That's 20, not 200. How about this one? 66. Okay, so what you do is you roll these two dice together. They're both 10-sided dice, and they create a tens and a ones percentage number. So in D&D, Advanced D&D, what you want to do is this rogue or thief is trying to hide in shadows. He has a percentage chance to succeed in normal kind of dungeon, shadowy environment situations. So the first basic by the book thing you would do is let him roll a percentage chance. Let the player roll it. So say he rolls it. He rolls a 54. Well, it's also the middle of the day in the desert with no cover. You could be a DM and say, you know what, I'm going to reduce your chance to hide in shadows by 25%. Now you have to be careful with this. You don't want this to turn into your rules are changing things for the player, so the player feels like you're working against it. What you need to be doing instead is kind of informing the player as a DM, as a friend, not as the DM, but as a friend, saying like, it kind of it's pretty bright. You're a pretty experienced thief, magic user, that maybe picking this guy's pocket. He probably doesn't have much. You can just tell from experience, like he doesn't have any coins jiggling in his pocket. You could try to maybe sneak up to him, maybe give him a little bump and see what you can lift out of his pocket. Do you want to try that instead? So you're kind of creating ideas. You're creating ideas for the player. So hiding in shadows and moving silently and coming up to this guy has now turned into almost like Ocean's 11 with Jason Bourne picking pockets on the subway train. Remember that film? So the whole bump and lift type of situation. So you turned what was going to be this like hide in shadows in broad daylight, moving silently, sneaking up like people do when they play their rogue in WoW or they're crouching in Elder Scrolls Online, into a situation where you just kind of bump this guy. Now, here's how and he can try to do his pickpockets roll, right? So the pickpockets chance for him is, what do we got for him? It's PP, pickpocket. There it is, 65% chance. We rolled a number earlier. Let's say we rolled this, let's say we rolled 22, 26, right? Say we rolled a 26. He rolled the 26. Now, what would you do? The DM, you're like, you didn't anticipate this happening. You're going to have to come up with something to make this either rewarding, or it's going to be interesting, or it's absolute flub, or he gets a bunch of dryer lint. Do you want the other guy to react? In theory, the way the rules are written, if this thief can pull that off, the other guy doesn't even know what's happened to him. So he might just bump up to him, put his hand on his shoulder and say, hey, how's it going, man? And the guy's just, what do you know? And he turns to you and like you just kind of slide your hand into his pocket, just pull something out. If you wanted to, you could approach it kind of like this. You could say, well, I'm going to give this guy a chance to like resist or to become aware of your pickpocketed attempt. So we could do something like this, right? You could say, well, I'm just going to say this guy has 10 intelligence, right? 10 intelligence. So 10 intelligence. I'm going to roll 4d6, and if I roll under 10, he's aware that you did the bump to him. Or you could do something like this. And let's just roll that, see what that happens, right? So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So he didn't notice it. Now that's not a rule in the game. That's kind of a house rule. It's kind of like a counter roll being made up on the spot to make it feel a little more challenging than it would be normally. Another way to do that is do the same thing. Say the guy has 10 intelligence. I call these ability score checks. And you could do it on a d20. And the odds of him rolling 10 or under on d20 are much higher, right? So say he rolls a 19. Well, that's above it. So you could do those kind of things to create a moment of tension where the DM, in an impartial way, without saying, oh, he doesn't detect anything, or he turns around and bitch slaps you, you get a chance for the dice to determine the outcome beyond the player thinking, I've got this ability, and if I roll a good number, I win. So those kind of situations are great ways for you to create some drama. Let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. So if we're just doing the bump, the bump, shoplifting, pickpocketing, passport lifting, wallet taking kind of thing that happens around the world in large crowds, what's actually inside of it? As a DM, you don't want to really ruin the moment. You can just create something funny. You can create something interesting. It's like when you lift something out of the guy's pocket, you need to be imaginative. It seems like the guy has like these three little. He's got three little carved ivory bone dice in his pocket. And every single one of them has 6 on it, as if he cheats at dice games, or something like that. Or you could say he has a little tiny little idol that looks like a picture of a woman. It's made out of bronze. It's a little rusty, and it looks like it has a little chain around it, like if he would wear it around his neck. Maybe it's a picture of his god or something. You don't really know. That might be an opportunity for you to engage in a conversation with him. Or you might pick his pocket and say, oh, he has 3 copper pieces. So that kind of player-initiated activity, which is bogging the whole game down, You need to be able to resolve that really, really, really quickly as a dungeon master to make it somewhat engaging, but not make it such that like, well, I'm going to go over to this guy and do it to him too. So I'm going to do it to him, and then I'm going to go do it to him to see what I've got. And the other players at the table, this is where you get into a tricky situation. The other players at the table are like waiting for the thief to get done being a weenie. So you don't want to tell them that. You don't want to tell the player that like, hey man, would you stop trying to steal stuff from them? What if they find out? They're going to give you a hard time, because you don't want players pissed off at your thief. What you want to have happen instead is you want your players to work together as a team. And also, at the same time, you kind of want the whole story, the group activity to kind of get moving. So this is a real fine line between a great dungeon master and a bad dungeon master. Just having the rules by the book isn't enough. Just creating particular creative situations can go down a rabbit hole, right? But blatantly telling the character you probably shouldn't do that is antagonistic between the dungeon master and the actual players. So that's not something you want to do. So you need to find a fine line based upon the personalities of people playing your tables. What's kind of fun, what's kind of engaging. Also, know the players you're playing with. Has this person ever played D&D before? When you give a new character sheet to somebody who's ever played before, they think it's their World of Warcraft character. They think, well, I can just cast a bunch of spells and my mana will regenerate. They may not understand all those kind of intricacies of the rule. Okay, so let's move on from there. So let's say you've got this Oasis situation, and everything's packed up and everything's ready to go, and we're going to move on, right? So we're just going to take this tabletop camera off, and we're going to take the board here, and we're going to pull this away so you can see the big map in the background. And we'll just go up to the front here. So that's where you, as the dungeon master, what you want to do is go back and take a look at your module, because sometimes you're playing the game and you're going to need to kind of read to them things that are in the module, or paraphrase things to them in the module, or stuff like that. You may also want to do something like this. This is something that I'll do. Let's turn the tabletop camera. Let's turn the overhead camera on, and we'll just turn the module off because the players don't get to see this, right? And I say, okay, well, I'll tell you what. As you guys, here's how I would actually run it. All right, so everything goes as normal. They get all the camels, and they load everyone up with all the stuff on the camels, and all the water, and the food, and the kindling wood, and all these kinds of things you need. I'm just going to pull these guys off the table real quick. And here's you guys as characters, or whatever you want to do. And, you get on your camels, and you start heading off west late in the afternoon. And then while I'm doing that, I can be, erasing the board, erasing the battle map. If I prepared another battle map, I'm just kind of telling them what's happening, keeping my voice calm, and not make it too exciting. So you travel for like the next 3 or 4 hours, and then the sun starts to go down, and it becomes dark. And then after you travel a little bit longer, in fact, you guys travel at night much longer than you thought they would. So you may want to show them on the map that like you eventually you're traveling across the desert, and you get to these little spots where there used to be ancient ruins, right? And here's like this big hex grid. You see this big hex grid, right? And this is like 30 miles across. This is 30 miles. So, the first day you guys only make like 24 miles. You come to the first old ancient ruins just on the outskirts of some town. Being able to visually draw something really quickly say you started here real quickly with a marker word like this is really useful for improvising things for your players. You reach the first set of ruins. It's just some, crumbled walls. Doesn't really have anything to it. Just looks like a good place for people to camp. You may want to take a screenshot from a video game here and show it to your players on your laptop or your iPad or whatever. It's a good place to make camp. So the guys say, we make camp here. So you're like, okay. So the first night, the guy, they set up camp. They set up all the food, and the horse, not the horses, but the camels are all tied up to some rocks, and they get a big dinner going, and everyone gets to hang out together. And they say, tomorrow you sleep now. Tomorrow we get up early. And then what you want to do is kind of like refer back to your module and say to yourself, okay, what's really going on with this kind of stuff, right? So let's pull this back up again. So one thing you mentioned is you really want to do is this right here at the outset of adventure. Some players are trying to gain control of the situation by pressing GM with a million questions. This is something I mentioned before. Those are the kinds of things I wanted to kind of give you these hands-on examples of how that could happen and how that could get out of control. So what we're pushing towards here is this stranger in a strange land kind of vibe, which works really, really well when you have players that haven't really played before. You want the players to feel dependent on the guides to get them to where they're going, right? So you could do things like this. Let's show you can show the players this visual reference, and you show them pictures that you printed up, and you can read this part right here. The dunes rise and fall like waves, shimmering sands, parched dust on an opaque sky. It's silent. Only the occasional slobbering blurt from your camel pierces the stoic silence. Your guides, their faces concealed behind indigo cloth, watch your every move, but with disinterest. So these kind of things here, which are just Google Images or Getty Images or magazine photos, because you're not selling it to anyone, you can make copies of anything. You can put them in PowerPoint, you can print them up. These kind of pictures, if you spend some time as a creative DM and put together some reference photos, it's much better than you trying to do something like, in the Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan, where they've got a famous artist that's drawn pictures for you. And when you have a big publishing company like Paizo or Wizards of the Coast, they have a lot of expensive artists that can do that kind of work for you. But you as a Ledger GM, images from Pinterest or whatever is your friend. And be sure to pick pictures that kind of really help. Like in this picture here, we're trying to make sure that the pictures of the guys in their desert Tuareg style outfits are all blue. We got camels in the shot. We just show dunes going forever. It's like one of the deserts in Black Desert Online is like this. So you don't really have a sense of like, wow, how much further does this thing go? It just goes forever. And if you're really having fun playing the game, you may want to do something like play some ambient background sounds or what have you. Now, the whole point of this is to kind of describe this whole journey across the desert. And you don't really need to have anything on the board to pull this off. As the caravan heads west out into the open desert, the first 3 days pass without incident. Travel starts before sunrise at 4 a.m. and stops around noon. Abdul and his brothers set up tents for everyone to rest during the heat of the day. At 4 p.m., the riding continues for another 6 hours until after dark. A night camp with dinner wraps up around 10 p.m. when everyone sleeps until 4 a.m. and the cycle repeats. The caravan leader Abdul Hamid and his two brothers direct everything and have all the supplies, water, food, and necessary equipment. You need only follow their instructions. No moving during the heat of the day as the sun can kill with heat stroke. And this is a situation where you want to do something like this. You're just trying to pass a passage of time. The adventurers that you're playing with, the people at your table, they don't need to roll for every single movement they're doing. You may want to do something like, here's the map. You've created this map. Your destination is this place way over here, right? And you're just going to take you the first day, the second day, third day, fourth day, 5 day, 6 day, 7 day, 8 day. And you could just make this little diagram that shows this is the kind of path you're going to take. Maybe this is just the infinite dunes of the desert or whatever. And the first day you guys camped here, and then you camped here, and you camped here is no big deal. And this is your first stop. This is the halfway point of your whole journey. It's this oasis here. So say that's what you're working towards. So sometimes just having some chicken scratch, the players can see this. They can see, oh, look, this is about how much of the adventure we're done so far. Now in D&D, they use a lot of random encounters, but when you're playing with new players, I actually recommend you not to do that, unless you just can't come up with anything creative to do. And normally in D&D, if you play these computer versions of these games, they'll have you random encounters and people will fight you in the middle of the desert. You don't want your party dead before they get to the real fun thing that you've put together. So, them traveling across the desert really isn't a big deal. And in this situation with the Indigo Oasis, there already is a dramatic element designed to happen. Something happens that catches them off guard. So we have the Sandstorm on the third day of the journey to this oasis. This is leftover from the Pathfinder stuff. A horrendous sandstorm kicks up from the west at midday. Abdul and his brothers leap in action, commanding everyone to cluster together with a makeshift shelter of heavy blankets. You all lie prone behind a dune to minimize the direct force of the wind. The storm tears the gear and the supplies to pieces, lifting anything not tied down and launching it across the parched dunes. The wind gusts of 200 miles per hour pluck the candles up and away from the cloud of sand into the cloud of sand. Abdul and his brothers say prayers nonstop, mumbling like children. At one stage, one of the brothers blames you for a bad omen, saying the gods betray them for helping infidels like you, motivated by greed. So if you wanted to, now how to run this. So if you're doing this kind of moment here, you could draw this. You could say, you're riding along the desert. Instead of reading all that, you could just wing it on your own way, right? You're riding along the desert. Everyone's riding on these camels. Everyone gets to dismount off the camels, right? So the guys that you're with, they get off. One guy in the back, one guy in the middle, one guy here. Here's you, you, and you. So here's the 6 of you in your camel train going across the desert. And let's say this is massive dune like this, right? Here's another big dune. Let's say this is the top of the dune. It slopes down. So this is all like downhill. In architecture, this would be a series of topography lines like this, right? Let's say this is the crest of a dune. Then it starts to go down that way. You've seen the GoPro videos of people mountain biking and stuff, right? So you dip down, you dip up, and you dip down again. So the guys jump off the camels, and they grab the camels. They pull the camels back down to the bottom. They take your camels and pull the camels down. They all work to get all the camels down to the bottom, and they point to the sandstorm. You can show them the picture of the sandstorm, and they say, "Come on, quick over here!" And everyone has to lay down. They're trying to get everyone to lay down like this, and they put a blanket over everyone, and you all have to lay down by this terrible sandstorm, and the camels all hunker down on all fours. You can find a picture of that. So this is kind of what's happening. You can just create this impromptu map to kind of describe, to pair up with your gameplay of what's going on. Let's get that light bent. So as night come down, lightning arcs through the storm, hitting each of Abdul's brother and killing them instantly. That doesn't sound very nice. So one guy gets zapped by lightning. He's dead. We're just going to blast him over here. Another guy gets blasted by lightning. Let's knock him down here. Let's say he gets killed. He gets zapped by lightning too. Right? That's pretty terrible. Overcome by emotion, Abdul drags their bodies under the blankets and hold them close. So he's going to take the bodies and grab the bodies of his brothers and hold them close underneath the blanket, maybe hunker down over here by the camels. Well, actually, they got plucked away by the sandstorm, didn't they? Woo. So these guys are gone. There's no more camel anywhere. Goodbye, camels. So at this stage, when I'm reading this and kind of doing the actions on the table, it doesn't feel like you're really there. That's why sometimes I think it's more fun to just read it. Because if you're reading something to somebody, the actions kind of crystallize in someone's mind. But if you don't have something written, or you aren't playing a module that has something written, like this storybook mode or this narrative prose writing mode, you could kind of describe these events as long as you're kind of controlling what's happening and not saying to the players, what do you do? The sandstorm's coming. Like, you don't want that happening. You want to create all this dramatic effect because your goal is to actually get the players separated and be all on their own and trapped in the desert. Let's go back to the description here. Through the night, lightning randomly strikes the sand, charring it into glass. Moving and walking is impossible. There's no escape from the storm's fury. So you have all this terrible lightning and crashing and striking the ground and turning the sand into big patches of grass. If one of your players tries to move, you can only move like 5 feet. After like 10 minutes of trying to drag yourself, if you stand up, the wind blows and knocks you down. All those kinds of things you can improvise on your own. Just make sure the players don't feel like, I'm just going to get up and run off. You can't do that with this 200-mile-an-hour winds happening. So the brutal sandstorm passes on at sunrise. You find yourself alone. Abdul is nowhere to be seen. The bodies of his brothers are missing. Uh-oh. So here's where a situation happens like, oh gosh, now my players are on a battle map. They get up the next day, and they're stuck in this desert. That's all right, don't worry. So that's where you want a situation where you're going to turn player control back over to them. So as the GM in this module here, what we've got is the players are in this grid, this infinite looping grid, and we talk about how the players can go in anywhere they want to, and no matter what happens, things will start to loop together, and they won't be able to go anywhere. So let me just read this to you really briefly before we come back here to the board, okay? This next phase of adventure is where you will transition the players from the lost in the middle of the desert to reaching a surrealistic Indigo Oasis. Many players immediately start searching around, looking for Abdul and his dead brother's bodies, and you can allow that to happen. Have your players, you've got some made up, it's just a bunch of sand, right? Big desert map. If you want to get a battle map from somewhere and use that, say the other dunes dip back up, and here's another crest of another dune like this, and this crest that goes up and down. So dunes are up and then down, just like in your picture, right? So you want to have players want to go bebopping up to the top of this and look down. It's just a sea of dunes. Just see it forever. That's where those pictures, like I was showing you earlier, like this, really, really come in handy. So you can show them like what's going on. So what you want the players to kind of do is like they're searching around. They're going to want to do whatever they want to do. They're by themselves. They're in the middle of the desert. They're not really sure where they are. How do you want to handle that? When the players, say the cleric says, where are we? Where actually are we on a map? Oh, there is no map. Well, say when the players are smart enough to bring a map, what you could do then is say, well, you can get your little notepad out, right? Here's your little notepad. You can say, well, it seems like, let's just use a Post-it note. Originally, you guys going to go to this destination here, and this is the halfway point, and you started down here. So you went 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You got to this oasis, and you got to here, and everything seems to happen here. So you're probably maybe 5 days away from your destination. And you may want to give them something like that, right? So you can show them like, you want them to think, but you don't want to tantalize them into thinking, if we just keep heading west for 5 days, we'll make it. Ideas that you want them to get into the next phase of the adventure, not start thinking that, oh, now's our chance to escape from the desert. And that's something that you're going to have to learn how to mitigate. And there's tips here in the module that talk you through how to do that. Let's go back to the module itself and see what it says. So you kind of want to develop this sense of fear and hopelessness for your players. They can start to search, give them complete freedom. You know, the more they search, after like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you can make them sweaty, tell them you feel faint, you need to sit down, make them dizzy. You know, you can describe medical symptoms of heat exhaustion to make them think that they're going to die, but you don't want to kill them. Now, you don't want the players parched to a husk, but the players are like, we're just going to all gather together and just start marching west like C-3PO and R2-D2 from the first Star Wars movie. I mean, you don't want that happening either, but they can do that because we've got things in this design that'll help you understand that. The goal is to make them understand that, like, you're in the desert, there's no food, there's no water. You know, a really smart cleric is going to say, well, that's not going to be a problem for us because of what, right? Because of this. Check this down here. Create water. So there's really no fear of dying. So in the cleric's mind, she's like, "Well, that's okay. We can just hike it, and I'll just create water for us, and we'll never run out of food, or I can memorize different spells." You might have a player thinking that, let me just see what other spells could I memorize in the cleric list here that would benefit us trapped in the desert. So the cleric might start flipping through the player's handbook, think I could do create water, I can create light. I might be able to, is there create food and water? Can I do that? Create food and water is level 3. The player's thinking, so, how many level 3 spells I have? Dispel magic, remove curse. I could pray to my deity, and by the following day, I can do create food and water. So they're never going to starve to death. You're not going to burn up to death in the desert. And that's okay. You don't want the players to not think that they're going to be okay. They're being resourceful. When a player starts thinking like that, they're being resourceful. They're thinking of ways that they can do things that will help them survive better, right? And that's okay. What you really want them to do is start exploring. So say they decide they're going to do that, right? So like I said here in yellow, expect players to think and act resourcefully, assuming escaping the desert is what they should be doing. All right? This is one thing about running a D&D campaign. It's really, really, really important. Let me just go back here to some of the philosophical sections of this module. You are the game master, not the game director. It's a fine art between controlling the situation, give them the pictures, giving the prose descriptions, kind of sort of guiding the thief away from picking everyone's pockets all the time without saying don't pick their pockets. There's nothing there. Make it engaging. You're trying to entertain them. You're trying to let things kind of like a dialectic. You kind of want things to kind of unfold. You want the players to drive the action. But you're the game master. You're the master of the game, not the game director. You're not telling them what to do, right? You're showing them the world and letting them do things on their own. How you give them responses is almost like having a little kid ask you, "Hey, Dad, how do motorcycles and cars have the same engines in them?" And maybe describe them to them in their kind of terms that lets you understand. Well, yeah, they're very similar. They both make power. One has 2 cylinders, and some cars have 4. And really big fast cars like Corvettes have 8 cylinders. And that might lead to the next question. So you're kind of teaching, right? You're calmly and patiently teaching, but only giving enough information to engage their imagination further. Now, you know that when you're talking to someone to engage their imagination, you're not telling them everything. Saying, no, motorcycles and cars are different, Billy. Like, that doesn't make it entertaining. So you have to kind of like tease information to let the players pull more from the actual gameplay situation. And this is what makes running a Dungeon and Dragons campaign, AD&D, a lot of fun, is you create this magnificent world where you haven't got everything figured out in advance. You need to be able to improvise. You need to learn how to communicate with the players, going back and forth between empowering them to do things without telling them what they can and can't do, letting them roll dice for certain types of checks, do all these neat house rule things to make it feel captivating and interesting for them. So we got this part right. What happens next? So what we have is a failure to communicate. We have this infinite dunes scenario. So in the infinite dunes scenario, let's just go back to our battle map here real quick. Let's get these kids off the board. What we want to have happen, most players are probably going to try to figure out, like, how can I escape the dungeon? How do I escape the desert? And this challenge the DM has put me in. He's taken away the camels. The sandstorms killed all of the guides. They know how to get there. We're pretty sure it's just west. Anyone can look at the stars in the sky and figure out where the North Star is. Anyone can start figuring that out. Well, you then want to kind of pull out the scale from this battle map scale to something large like this, where you can say, okay, well, let's just draw these little on a piece of paper here. Let's say a 4x4 grid here. And you got this, as they start going into a distance, say the players are all started here, and they say, we're just going to keep going west. And like I said before, let's just draw this over here. Let's say this is north, right? So the angle you're looking at it in YouTube, this is west and this is east. This is south and this is north. So in their mind, they're like, oh, let's keep going this way, right? They think if they just keep going this way forever, they're going to reach their magical destination somewhere over here. They're not sure where it is. And that's a completely reasonable way for them to think. But if you look at the way we got the module designed here, each one of these 6 mile by 6 mile squares, let's say this is 6, this is 6, 6, 6. They start hoofing it 3 miles and another 6 miles, and as they get this, there's a tic-tac-toe grid with this being the center, right? When they go one grid over, they come back over, back where they started from. And so this is one thing you can do to kind of start hinting at the surrealism of what's going on in the adventure. It isn't a situation where they can just keep walking and walking and walking and they feel like they're getting closer and closer to their destination. You can start doing things like when they walk from here and they cross this boundary and they come back to this boundary, there's no teleportation effect. There's no footprints in the sand. So even if they walk back here and back to where they started, they see signs of where they were walking around the sand, but they don't see their footprints going this way. It's as if it never happened. It's like it got erased because this whole thing is kind of like a glimpse or a ripple in time. So, what you're doing here is using what I call an abstract mapping. So this is an abstract map. You don't need a battle map for it or anything like that to kind of let them understand, like as they go here and start walking, you come back to where you were. Now, the first time you present that to them, you may want to be, as you walk here, you see the area up ahead, and as you walk close to it, you realize this is where you were standing before. And they might be like, what? So you're like, wait a minute, how does that work? So you could even do something like this, right? You can say, okay, so here's where you guys started, and you had left something on the ground here, right? Here's a bunch of stuff on the ground, and you started walking. And you went, this is a 6 mile by 6 mile post-it note. And then when you get to this post-it note, and then you walk to this one here, and as you walk back, as you walk here, walk 3 miles over dunes, sweating your butt off, drinking water, get all the way to here, you soon realize that as you go along, you end up here again. So this feels like you did this, right? Now everything gets shifted over. So it feels like in your mind like you did all this, but you're right back where you started from again. And even if you go do it again, everything keeps looping back on. And everything keeps happening no matter which direction you keep doing. You just keep dominoing back to the center location where you are. You may want to, after time, after players have tried it a number of ways, don't give them this answer right away. Let them try to do all this exploration, the things they want to do, because they think they're supposed to be escaping the desert. That's their idea of what they think they're supposed to do. That's when you want to do something by showing them the landmark. So we have this skeleton and this trunk landmark. You can make that appear later. You can make that appear right off the bat. If you make it appear off the bat, it doesn't have this weirdness of like we're in this infinite loop in the desert and how much longer is it going to take. So you may want to think about letting them do the loop a number of times to get a handle on the loop, almost to the point where they plunk down the sand and the sun comes down. They're not sure what to do. They feel like they're trapped in the desert forever. I think that would be much more compelling for them to feel trapped in the desert forever. Make them feel like there's a sense of hopelessness, right? Your first goal is to develop a fear and a sense of hopelessness. So if you were trapped in a desert like that, you couldn't go anywhere, you'd be like, oh my God, we're trapped here forever. What's happened? Was something about the sandstorm? Is this a Bermuda Triangle thing? What's going on? So there is a landmark. This is where we have this Crimson Warrior landmarking. So once your players settle into a pattern of resting, moving in cooler temperatures, searching a way out of the desert, you can introduce the next element, which serves the purpose of landmarking for the looping desert concept. So read the below passage to the players. So let me pull that up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is this next section here. So we talk about this looping thing where you're just looping and looping and looping. Hopefully I had that up when I was talking about it. I may not have. So as you move across the endless dunes, we're reading about right here, okay? You see something half buried in the sand. As you approach, it looks to be a desiccated camel skeleton and a warrior rider. So players right off the bat are going to think it's the guides from the caravan. The warrior wears tattered and faded red robes marked with a crimson star design, concealing a shattered scale mail jacket. The skeleton's mandible lies open as if still gasping for air and seems to have been here for at least 1,000 years. So this may be a situation where you want to kind of go back to your battle map. And that's why it's nice to have something with a whiteboard with a grid. I'm using a piece of plexiglass on top of a piece of white dry erase marker board that's glued to a 1/2-inch foam core. Just, you guys may see this in some other videos. These things are pieces of plexiglass with cabinet stops on them. That way I can put a map on underneath here and lay this down, and I can draw on it, and you can still see what's going on. And I'm actually only ever drawing on the plexiglass, I'm not really drawing on the permanent marker grids marks I did, because if I did that, it makes them come off. So you might want to have this like, here's this dead camel, and there's this dead skeleton guy lying in the sand. If you wanted to, you could even say, like, here's this dead skeleton guy in the sand. So here you guys are. Maybe you're together, maybe you're separated, maybe you all conjoined together. So here you are in the middle of the desert. Here's this big sand dune going like this. Maybe it's a little valley thing with the pins around this way. So you've been walking. Here's all your footprints in the sand. And you get to the spot, and we'll just use our dead camel thing, right? Here's our camel, and there's a dead rider. And if you want to, let's go ahead and pull this in here so you can see what we're talking about. Let's pull this a little closer. We'll turn this way like this so you can see it from this angle. Is it really necessary? So we'll put that there like that. There we go. All right, so there you are with the dead camel in the sand, so you can read the rest of this. As you look closely, his outstretched skeletal arms and hands clutch something square protruding from the sand. So his hand sticking out. He's got something square sticking out of the sand like this. Just put this big black mark here like that. So players immediately be like, oh, what's this? Check this out. What's going on with that? Cleric might start trying to do something, a rifle to the body. Who knows what's going to happen, right? So you may want to take this and put this here like this. There we go. Sorry, my hand's blocking the light. All right, so now what we have is an intricate carved red trunk, easily 3 feet long by 2 feet wide. A single keyhole sits between the latch and the middle. The chest is locked. The chest lock is jammed, frozen from eons beneath the sand, but a cursory search of the soldier reveals a brass key with a ring and a charm in the design of a jug of pottery. Labeled in cursive writing on one side is a block etching on the other. So you have this little key, right? It's on this little chain, a brass key with a ring, and on the ring is this charm, and the charm has 2 sides to it. So you could, on one side, you have this very blocky looking writing you see down below, and this is where we show to your players. On the other side, you have this like almost Arabic looking writing. So on the right hand side, we talk about how to handle this. A lot of times what you're going to have, let's just pull this down real quick. A lot of times you're going to have, guess what's going to happen? The moment you say chest, this guy here is going to want to say something. He's like, oh, I'm going to see if I can pick the lock. Well, you can let him try. Let's just give him a chance here, right? He's not going to really pick it. You know it's been open locked forever. So his open locks is down here, 62%. So you can try, but your experience tells you that this thing is jammed and rusted and busted, but you can try if you want to. So you maybe rolls, in this case you roll a 30. It's like, if the lock was functional, you would have picked it. But you can tell it's just filled with debris and junk and sand and decayed and ruined. And you might have a situation where like, well, my character sheet has bin bars and lift gates. Can I bash it with my pommel of my longsword? You can let the player, he can bash the chest if he wants to. That's fine. That's not a problem. And the cleric might say, hey, I found a key. So you're like, well, let's see what happens with that. So on the key, you may want to reveal that on the ring is this charm, and the charm is designed like a jug of pottery. On either side of the charm, this flat like a key fob. If you think of a key fob, you'd have if you buy a keychain for your car keys, think of something that's kind of like a decorative key fob. This is what the little charm is, and it has these 2 words written on it. So allow the players to perform what I call an ability score check. This is a house rule of your choice. And I'm going to describe to you how I would do this. Now, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they have elaborate rules for read magic and decipher writing and all that kind of stuff. But really, all you really need to do is just let different characters use common sense and common knowledge and use their ability scores, which is like strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, and roll a d20. And if they roll under their chosen stat that's associated with the check that you pick as a DM, you can give them the answer. Because it isn't a situation where they're going to fail and they're never going to figure it out. So decipher the writing, right? Let's say this, I made this up. This is a house rule I made up. Let's say that the thief, who has pretty good intelligence, it's okay. It's like 12 intelligence. How much intelligence does the cleric have? She's wise. She's got 14 intelligence. What's her wisdom? 16. She's the smarty of the pants of the group. She's got the key in her hand. She's like, well, can I figure out what it says or read it or anything like that? What you want to do is say, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to give you this chance to decipher the writing. So, and this is where you see this. I'm going to make it an intelligence check. So all you need to do is roll a d20 under your intelligence to see whether you figure it out or not. Here's the d20 right here. So the character's like, okay, what's my intelligence? They're looking at their character sheet and they say, oh, my intelligence is 14. So they may ask you for confirmation. Do I need to roll 14 or less? You say, yep. If you roll 14 or less, you can decipher it. So they roll and they roll a 5. So then when that happens, that's when you want to read to them and give the player success. Now say they didn't understand what it was and they rolled an 18. There's ways to handle that as well. You may want to give them a vaguer answer. So let's just say she did success. In the Ancient Oasis, you just make up some Oasis name. The pendant reads Tafalat, which literally means Janna's jug for drinking water from the Indigo Oasis. And you may want to say, you know what, based upon all the things you learned over history and in time when you were going to school and becoming a young cleric, or when the magic user was training in an arcane college, you might remember a history lesson related to those designs. And this might be an intelligence check as well. Now, these are like skills being made up in AD&D that aren't there. And AD&D was like detect magic, read magic. That's it. There was no way to really tell what something was or decipher anything, detect evil, detect traps. It was just good, bad, or evil. This was left really wide open so the DM and the players could figure out things. Using systems like Traveler and a lot of other games, some of the skill ideas are in 3.5 and in Pathfinder and in 5th edition, you can kind of make up your own skill checks. But players don't know what they are. So you may want to say to them, you know what, based upon your past life and the things you've done in the past, you could probably figure out what this is if you can remember those lessons you had in class that talked about the history of this region of Greyhawk. In our campaign, we're using Greyhawk. So why don't you do what I'm going to call a remember history check. If you just roll your intelligence to less, but I'm going to make it harder. I'm going to make you roll 3d6. You got to roll under your intelligence to remember the history lesson from when you were a kid, right? So you just pull this down here so you can see this a little bit better. And this is called making a house rule, right? A lot of people don't like house rules. They flip out on them, but I love them. So it's going to do it with her first. Let's use our cleric, Mirror the Disgraced. What's her intelligence? 14. 4d6, 14 or less. 2 and 2 is 4, and 2 is 6, and 4 is 10, so she succeeds. So in that situation, she succeeds. If she didn't succeed, you could give her a vaguer version of this. Like, you sort of remember something about this. Let me give you the succeeded version first. You know that the two different languages are from a period of war over 1,000 years ago where two brothers fought against one another, ultimately killing each other's families under two banners, the Crimson Sun and the Indigo Waters. Now let's say that she failed the check, and let's say also that everyone else in the group failed the check too, right? Let's say that Care, the apprentice, the thief magic user, tried it and he failed it because he has intelligence of 12. Say that the fighter who has intelligence of 9 completely failed. The other thing you might want to do is you may want to say it's okay to make it hard. The 46 makes it harder to roll under the intelligence. I mean, try to roll 46 underneath the fighter's intelligence. I mean, 4 and 4 is 8. Another 4 is 12. This 16. I mean, he's already way over his intelligence. So say no one passed the test. You don't want to feel like, well, you can't figure anything out. You want to make it kind of incremental. More detail for succeeding, good enough detail to keep progressing with when you failed, okay? Because this isn't a make or break thing. You're not rolling to hit to try to kill someone. You're not trying to pick a lock that's going to be super important or find a secret door and all that kind of stuff. So feel free to use information that's going to be a little bit vaguer. So let's just look at our landscape here view of the Indigo Oasis. So remember history. Let's say everyone failed, right? You can tell obviously there's two different languages. And it seems to be something from, as you remember from school, there was a period of war where these two factions were fighting. One of them was like Crimson Sun or something, and the other one was like Indigo Waters. But you can't remember who it was specifically or their names, but you can remember there was two factions that were at war and they were fighting, and they were family at some point, and they wrote these two, they broke away from each other and started their own languages. So all you do is impart that there's two forces, that a long time ago, there was two forces at each other's throat, period of war. That's good enough information. Now, let's say someone wanted to cast, some kind of identify magic spell, right? That's where you want to give them the absolute exact answer. You could even have a situation where your players are playing the game. You got detect magic and read magic. You might have Care the Apprentice cast a read magic spell, right? Let's go check that out in the player's handbook real quick. So here's all the spells. Let's go to spell explanations. Let's go to the magic user spells, and we want to find read magic. I believe that's what is that for him? That's level 1. So level 1 magic user spell. Druids, magic users. Here we go. Read magic. Where is it? Detect magic. There it is. Read magic. Let's see if we can find that in the book here. we're looking up here to find the spells. Featherfall, Friends, Hold Portal, Spider Climb, Shocking Grass, Read Magic. So it's okay to pull out the player's handbook or your PDF version and read through this real quickly. By means of a Read Magic spell, the magic user is able to read magical inscriptions on objects, books, scrolls, weapons, and the like. Okay, they would be otherwise totally unintelligible to them. So in this situation, they would be able to tell, oh, these two words, they mean Tafalat, which literally means Janna's jug for drinking the water from the Indigo Oasis, and you might want to give them the bonus information saying that, the pendant seems magical, as if it doesn't really belong in this time and space. When you hold it in your hand, you see a mirage of a building and a beautiful spring-fed canal fade in and out for a moment. For a moment, you thought you heard a faint music echoing across the water, a woman's voice singing, a hurdy-gurdy, a tabla, hand drums, mandolins, and violins. It just kind of faded all away. It was just like you had this little flashback for a second. Like, that's really intriguing. That's the kind of thing you want to have happen. So by the character, in this case, the rogue, trying to blow a spell, right? He's going to get back, doing this read magic spell on the key fob, literally, on the chest. You give him this really mystical thing. You give him all kinds of clues. You've tipped him off as that it's magical. You tipped him off that it doesn't seem like it belongs in this time and space. You tipped him off about, the memory that he sees. Let's go back to here so you can see what I'm talking about. This is what we're talking about down here. You had this vision in his mind with visual imagery of what's happened and what does he see, all this kind of stuff. These are the kinds of things that are going to get a player that feels like they did an action in a game, had a little bit of house ruling, where it feels like they discovered a secret, and it's at different tiers. So if they did it, great. If they didn't do it, give them enough information to go forward from there. So we have this chest, right? And what does it look like? Maybe your players are going to want to dig the chest out. So they're all going to get around here and start digging the chest out of the sand and pull it out, because it seems like something really cool is going to happen with that, right? So we'll just turn this overhead view off in the background. There we go. So, I describe here, like, if the players don't succeed the checks, give them some information. So, for example, let's say no one succeeded any of these checks, and they're holding the jug charm that's on the key. As you hold the charm on the ring in your hand, music emanates around you, echoing across lapping water. A woman's voice singing, a hurdy-gurdy, a tabla, hand drums, mandolins, a violin, all manner of curious stringed instruments play a beautiful song with intertwined melodies and a powerful marching rhythm. The music is faint and drifts off after a few moments, no matter how hard you concentrate. Right? So they use the key. Moment of truth. Go up to the chest, jam the key in, sand comes out, beetles claw out, the key clicks, and air hisses out from the trunk like a gasp of breath. That gives it that whole, like, Tutankhamun's curse just got released into the desert. The lid creaks and opens on its own. Ooh, it's kind of magical. It doesn't just like creak open and you lift it. It just kind of opens on its own like a car with a pneumatic trunk on it, right? Inside is a beautiful indigo silk covering several musical instruments. So the players can, players can pull the silk back and take a look, and you see these crazy instruments. You can show them these pictures. Like, this is stuff from Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, North Africa, Morocco, all periods of history, not just one particular, not 500 AD, not 1500s, a series of cultural instruments. You're using Google images here. You got the blue silk in the background, and you have these instruments, and they look at all these wacky, crazy instruments. In fact, the fact that they're labeled hurdy-gurdy and mandolin, violin, and tabla, those are instruments your average Joe doesn't know. And because you described what they sounded like when you said a hurdy-gurdy, a tabla, hand drums, mandolins, a violin, and now they're opening the chest, and guess what they see inside? You can tell there's going to be a connection. Players are going to figure out, like, wow, there's a connection between the sounds I heard when I was holding the charm in my hand versus this what's inside this chest. This is cool. We should figure this out. This is the hook. This is the moment of truth. This is where someone is going to pick up one of these instruments. Someone in the party is either, they're going to be very careful, and they're going to detect traps, and they're going to try to lift it with a stick, and they're going to do all this crap. Ultimately, someone's going to reach down there and pull an instrument out. Now, the moment they grab an instrument, if you play in the game, you want to play the song from Lorena McKinnon in the background, that's great. I can't play it because it's YouTube. I don't want to get a copyright violation right on the video. But you can play music. You can pick your favorite song and play it in the background. You can play the song yourself with a guitar. It doesn't matter to me. But this is what you want to have happen, where it says read to players. As you hold the instrument, it seems to fill you with expertise in musicianship like you never imagined. You begin playing a wonderful song as if you'd done so your entire life. The instrument is not playing itself, it's you. You can improvise, circle around in any key, and blend your own creativity with the main melody. So what basically happens here is the player suddenly, the character suddenly has this incredible skill with this instrument. And a lot of times what's going to happen is one character is going to try grabbing a different instrument and see what happens. Let's go back and see what the instruments look like, right? Oh, I'm going to try the mandala. I'm going to try the tabla and trying the harp. And they're going to try these combinations. But as they start playing this music and dorking around with it, they'll find that like when player one picks up the hurdy-gurdy, and player 2 uses the doorstop flute, and player 3 picks the mandala. When they play the instruments, they're playing parts of a song that's already in progress. So they're not really starting to play an individual tune separately. Like your friends listen to a Spotify song, and you turn on your song, and they're not in sync, they're not playing together. It's almost like Lord of the Rings Online with the AABC system, the ABC music system. The moment you pick up the instrument, it starts playing that part of a song. And you want to, as a DM, you want to make sure you express that to the players. They catch it so they understand it like, whoa, I can improvise, but I'm actually playing part of the song that's already being played magically in front of me, but I seem to be doing it. So this is really, really key. What's going to end up happening is this is going to transport the players somewhere else in time. They're not going to move to another location. Nothing like that's going to happen. No one's going to die. They can pick the instruments up, but once they start to play them, that's when you want to make this transition. So this is where we make the transition, right? And what we're going to do to make this really exciting, because players love it when you change the battle map. So we're going to turn that little tabletop camera off. We'll turn the overhead camera back on. So well, listen, as you start playing this music, everyone starts playing in tune with each other. See how I'm moving the stuff off the screen while I'm talking still? You start playing in tune. The same parts of the same song keep playing, and all the world around you starts to dissolve and fade. Let me just adjust this battle map for you, and then we'll move on to the next section. So I'm going to read this to you, and we got this prepared for you ahead of time. Yay. No more chicken scratch. And what you want to do is this is the campfire, and you want the players to kind of appear like they're appearing in a dream around this campfire, not even understanding how they got here or what happened or anything like that at all. And so in here is where Jana is. So what we want to do next, let's turn her this way. Let's read to the players what happens. As you play the song, the world around you shifts. The sun and moon rises and sets 1,000 times. You see clouds move in reverse, smoke billowing on the horizon, the sound of battles, clanging swords, and screams of death. You know, I got an audio track for that, right? You can hear all this terrible small battle sounds in the background. Pretty loud, huh? So you could do that kind of stuff if you're playing at a table with a Bluetooth speaker. You may want to like doing those kinds of stuff if you want to do that. It's really up to you. So I'm going to turn that down pretty low while I move on to the next section. Hopefully it won't be too loud. See, they hear all these memories of distant fighting. The sound of battles, clanging swords, and screams of death. Flaming arrows assail a walled city, and stones crumble to dust. Warriors ride past you, but they don't see you. It's as if you're not there, but you are. Yet you can't seem to stop playing the instrument in your hand. The air shifts from a parched, dusty heat of the desert to a cool, misty freshness of a spring. You hear water flowing and a campfire crackling. And that's where you want to like bring in the other ambient sounds. There we go. Let's put that in the background. You hear water flowing and a campfire crackling. The desert vanishes. You stand shrouded by night around a roaring campfire. The voice of woman singing lingers for a moment, but then fades. Ancient stone ruins and magnificent blue pillars tower around you. Beyond, the walls of an ancient city, flickering in torchlight, lies to the south. In front of you are a pair of sandstone estate buildings, crumbling and partially destroyed. Inside one is candlelit, and the sound of a little girl's voice talking to herself playfully. You feel your soul tugged into the past. So that's a really, really dramatic transition for you to return player controls back to your players. And we're going to put our plexiglass on top of this battle map so we can draw on top of things. So from this point forward, this is where the rest of the adventure takes place. It doesn't really go anywhere else. Everything happens here. So this is the real good battle map for what's going on. So see how the little girl is in here goofing around. So in this module, the way I designed it and created it is include these ambient sounds, which I'm playing in the background. I'm probably going to turn them down because some of you listen to this stuff on your cell phone and maybe you're at work or whatever, but you get the idea, okay? So I'm going to turn that stuff off in the background. And if you're not into that kind of stuff, I completely understand, but I want you to be able to hear me for the rest of the thing without the background sound effects being too annoying, right? So we'll turn that off, and we'll turn all these sounds off. Okay, let's go back to where it's just really crisp and clear. You don't have to worry about hearing those background sounds being noisy. So you make this transition, and you get to this place like this, where everyone's standing around this campfire. And so you want to describe this whole scene to them. And there's a bunch of visual images. Now what you can do is this. This is an upper raised platform, ancient sandstone, 4 really big, tall, crumbling columns. What used to be like an opulent, beautiful house partially destroyed. This is all illuminated by candlelight. To candelabras, you can say this is a candelabra. It's giving off light like this. This is a candelabra illuminated, it's casting light out the window. You have curtains hanging from the ceiling, a big beautiful table just full of a magnificent spread of a feast, all kinds of silks. Here's a candelabra here, very warm lit, very cordial, almost like a little campfire going on. Big beautiful silk rug on the ground. But this is these are crumbling openings in a crumbling wall. Maybe even part of the roof's caved in. You got this kind of overgrown kind of vibe happening. There's these big, beautiful braziers burning, smoke going off like this. And we're going to show you some visual aids in a minute that give you a real good idea what that looks like. And off in the distance is just like, the dark night all around you. And just out this way is the desert. This is the desert. And right down the middle here is all this beautiful blue indigo waters running towards kind of like a marshy area over this way. Across this little canal, because it really is a few steps down to walk to the water, which is like 2 or 3 feet deep, and then walk back up, is another flat plateau on the same plane as this one. So these are like the same plane level. And 4 more columns, but much more crumbling. And the desert's starting to take this over now with some bushes and scraggly cactuses and stuff. And here's another building over here, but it doesn't have anything in it. So players are going to want to immediately start exploring this environment. And that's okay, but we got something set up for them. So this is kind of the map. Now, when you're playing the map, this is a key for you. If you've got a copy of the other one digitally and you printed it or whatever, you want to draw it by hand, that's totally fine too. So we've got some names for these things. We're calling this the West Terrace, okay? And then we've got this turned a little bit different than it would be for you playing the map. I've got it turned a little bit. So I'm not going to focus too much on the map that's over here on the right, but I'm going to just call it out to you by using the guide. So I'm actually going to conceal what I have in the guide, so you can just focus on the screen to the left here, okay? So just conceal that. So this is the West Terrace. We call this the East Terrace. So if this is east and this is west, that means north is this way. So you may want to establish for your players which way is north. Okay? So this is going to be north. So this is west. This is east. This is south. This is north. You may want to call this the walled city is off this way that you saw in the images. This is the ruined west estate and the ruined east estate. So it's pretty easy. Line down the middle, north, south, excuse me, west, and then east. So if you're facing north, to your right is always to the east. Okay, so let's get on the details here. So what we have now is a number of visual images that you can show the players to give them a sense of what this place looks like. So if you're at the terrace looking towards the north, like if you were standing here, let's just use this character here. We'll pull these 2 off the board, leave them by the campfire. If you're standing here and you're looking this way, this is kind of what you see, where you see these torch braziers burning, the steps going down. This gives you a sense of like how many steps it is to the bottom of the canal. If you were to stand in the same spot and you would look to the south, you see this magnificent walled city, which is really kind of a mirage. It isn't really there. You'd see this in the distance. If you looked to the north and went way up this way, you walked all the way up here and turned around and looked back all the way down that way, that's what you would see. You see this huge canal, the 2 buildings on either side, and this distant city behind it. And if you were actually went all the way down here to where the marsh is, where this racer is sitting, you would see this view of the this low-level marsh. It's almost like a still waters thing, and this mirage of the city. But it's not under attack. It's just you see torches and stuff burning in it, as if everything's okay and nothing bad's happened. Now, if you were to kind of like zip your way over here somewhere and take a look, you'd see more ruins and the platform and the city in the distance. In fact, you're probably more looking maybe from about this position here. If you're looking, this way is what you would see. And you go back down to here. This is just to give you a sense of some of the details of what some of these things look like with the stone steps and the torches and the large palm trees that are sitting here. It's almost like sago palms in a way. So all these references here give you a good sense of the environment. Now, what the players are going to do before anything happens, you probably want to have this event happen right away, okay? Where this other character, Jana Tinan, is going to run out of the building and start talking to you. One thing you don't want to have happen in this venture, but you can if you want to, is you don't want players spending a lot of time wandering around this entire area, exploring it, without having first seen her. Because the moment you appear, you are playing music, and she's going to come rushing out of the building. Let's go through that first. Now, the players are going to be able to explore this area all they want, but let's get to this next event happening first. So, if remember they did the remember history thing before, we talked about doing a check against your intelligence, and if you rolled underneath it, you can remember history lessons from school. The buildings before you match what you once saw in ancient texts, mosaics, and paintings, the fabled kingdom of the Indigo Waters. As you recall, the kingdom was interlocked in a brutal war between two brothers that ultimately led to the destruction of both empires over 1,000 years ago. So we're really kind of telling here. They always tell you when you're writing a novel to show, don't tell. What we're doing is telling, because what we're doing is we're imparting information to your character that your character would know, but you as the player you don't know. In film, sometimes they do it as a flashback, or they'll show a previous event happening, or in a book they'll have a flashback, or one character will have dialogue talking to the other character that drops hints about things. We still need to impart the information to the players, so this is where the remember history ways for you to kind of directly, very straightforward, give them the information that shows how this all connects to what the character knew in the past. And there was two factions. The Indigo Waters, ruled by Mehmet Tenan III, and the Crimson Sun, ruled by his jealous brother Ahmed Tenan. So you can see there's these two brothers that are, their last name is the same, and this is the daughter of Mehmet Tenan III. So as soon as possible, have Jana appear in the doorway and run to the players excited. So she comes running up to everyone, like a little kid, right? She comes running up. Let's get her on the grid. I know some people hate that business. Let's get everyone actually on a grid square, standing in front of the fire on these little cushions. Little girl in the indigo robe runs out of the ruined western estate, embraces you. She excitedly demands you keep playing the music, saying, "That's my mother's song. You must be the traveler she promised would come." Overjoyed, she tugs on your arm, demanding you play more. So this is the next thing. This is the situation where you've got the players now have freedom. They can start talking to the girl. They can start asking her questions. What's really happened is the players are back in a piece of time that's between the distant past when she was actually alive and 500 years after she died. So she's a ghost. These are all crumbling ruins of where she last was when she was killed. So you don't want the players to see her as translucent. You can't really damage her or do anything to her. There's all kinds of interesting tricks you can do to make sure this kind of propagates and goes forward correctly. So she's really a spirit. Her spirit is lingering here, waiting for her mother and her dog, right? So as we see here, this is kind of a Game Master only page. The spirit lingers in the most magical memory she had, listening to her mother sing Marco Polo song to her by the campfire as a group of rural musicians played the music. So her dog, what happens, there was an attack. This whole area was attacked, and things went really nasty, and she ultimately was killed. Let's read you the backstory. So as a dungeon master, you know how to kind of express this to the players. Her mother, Queen Tin Hanan of the Indigo Waters Kingdom, and her entire family was murdered that night by Ahmed Tenan and those warriors of the Crimson Sun sieged the city in a surprise attack. Before the attack, Jana's mother went to the palace in the city, leaving Jana here at the Indigo Oasis with her 4-month-old floppy-eared Africanus mixed puppy, Jingo. Jana made the musicians that were with her play the Marco Polo song that night, but at one stage, the Crimson Sun warriors charged onto the platform, killed all the musicians in cold blood, Jingo ran away, and Jana was captured and tortured to death over the course of 3 weeks by her evil uncle Ahmed Tenan, the king of the Crimson Sun. So this is important because what's happening, where you are right now, your players are now, they are at the right site many, many years later after the kingdom has fallen. But they're also in the same spot that they were in the desert thousands of years later. This whole thing is just covered with sand. So remember, she's a spirit, so the players can talk to her, and all she's going to know is if you were talking to a little girl, like an 8-year-old, 7-year-old little girl who loves playing the music, thinks you guys are the musicians, you have these instruments in your hand, the crimson trunk is there with you or whatever, and she wants you to play more songs, and her mother left, and her mother's going to be back. You also have a situation where you need to do the looping desert forever thing. So if the players walk outside the boundaries of the battle map, they find themselves looping back on the other side. This allows you to keep all the action contained on the battle map as an attack starts to happen where you need to defend her. Some players are going to do things like ask her a million questions. You feel free to improvise that. She doesn't know anything about an attack on a city. Everything's fine. She'll think you're crazy. Imagine talking to a little kid in the Sixth Sense about that kind of stuff. It's that kind of a vibe. So she thinks everything's wonderful. Her dog is around somewhere. Her mother took the dog. So now she just wants you to play music. She's tugging on your shoulder. Play the song. Play the song. I love the song. She loves music. Her mother sings to her, etc. She may want to have her guide everyone into here after playing music for a while and then rest and cast spells and do all kinds of stuff. The sun never comes up. This place stays dark forever. You can wait and wait and wait, and the sun never comes up. It just stays dark all night long. This table is covered with all kinds of beautiful foods and almost like a banquet, right? So you don't really have a situation where anyone's going to starve to death because everyone's kind of trapped in this 2-hour interval of time. It just keeps repeating itself forever. You look at the moon, it goes up a certain distance, and then it just resets back in the same distance. But it moves so slow, you glance at it once and blink, and it's reset again. And if you look at the candles, they all burn down to a certain distance, and you blink, and they're back to the beginning, burning down again. So every 2 hours, things stop and then pick back up where they were again. But no one gets transported. So say, for example, Jana was like, I'm not going to go in the water and get wet, and you want to go over here and explore. And after 2 hours, everything resets, but she's still wherever she went, and you're wherever you went. And say the moon was over here, and the moon was moving like this, and the moon moves back again every 2 hours like this. So those are kind of tricky, contact, meet dear old dad on the beach type vibes you want to do. But as your players move around and explore, they just get a sense of the layout of everything, but nothing really is dangerous here. There's no things in the cabinets to find. There's really nothing bad. There's no monsters attacking, but you can't leave. So just about the time the players have explored this whole area and gotten a good sense of where they are and that they're trapped in some kind of strange, time lock or something like that, whatever they want to call it, they'll call it something. That's when you want to kick off the action, okay? This page here is just for your backstory. It's not really for you to read to the players or reveal too much of it. What you'd want to reveal is maybe the name of the mother or the name of her dad or the name of her dog and how she's had the puppy this many months and things like that. But she's just having a good time waiting for her mom to come back. So as far as the girl is thinking, as far as she knows, you guys are just musicians that were promised to come and play her music. And why aren't you playing music? And everything is okay. Now, the world that you're in is decayed and ruined, but to her, it looks perfect. So you're in a place with ruins and crumbling ruins, right? But to her, it looks wonderful. So when you talk about the city or you talk about these crumbling ruins or you talk about how these sandstones are all chopped, she's like, what are you talking about? They're perfect. They're wonderful. I love it here. Like the roof of the building is collapsed, but to her, it seems fine. She's kind of trapped between the night that she died when everything was perfect. You've been teleported back in time to where her spirit was ultimately trapped or set free. So there's a little bit of play of time going on here. So here's where you want to kick it into action. Once you think everyone has done what they can do, they've explored the environment, they've talked to the little girl, they've rested, they've redone their spells, and everything seems ready, that's when you want to launch the attack. And here's how that's going to work. We've got these yellow skulls in our map here. Think of those as like spawn spots from a Killing Floor or a Left 4 Dead game. This is where you're going to have undead warriors. There's different kinds, and some of them are alive and some of them are dead, are going to run up and start attacking and try to do things. Let's just go through the combat encounter here and we'll actually play it for a few minutes, right? So in the attack sequence, enemies are going to appear from the darkness and work their way through the ruins. The red arrows show the suggested paths they might travel, and as you can probably suspect, they're interested in Jana. So they're not really interested in you. This includes jumping through windows and all sorts of aggressive movement. Use all 6 spawn locations to keep the flow of enemies interesting. We'll talk about that from a philosophical perspective too. See page 33 for suggestions how to keep the balance and flow of enemies based on player experience, skill, and the number of players. We're going to actually do that today as well. All the enemies initially appear will be living versions of the Crimson Sun Warriors. So what you have happening is a bunch of warriors are going to attack. So if you've got any miniatures or any characters, in fact, we'll just use these Ogre Magi here, right? So she, even though she's dead and a spirit, she's going to think these are real guys coming and attacking. Now they are living. Let's say these guys come riding in and they come running in and jump off horses and come running across this area here and start working their way across this platform. What they're going to do is as follows. She sees them and she knows they're the enemy. She's going to flip out. That's why if you actually look at the map here, we've got a spot marked on the map where she would run and flee to. So this area that's marked in red here is where she would flee to. This is kind of like her hiding spot, okay? So we've got a sphere of music that can happen around the campfire, and we've got this danger zone for when she gets afraid when the attack happens. So we've got she's just going to run into this building here. So when the attack comes, she's going to try running into this building here. But other situations may happen where other guys may come in the building and they're going to try to capture her. So let's go through this real quickly and give you a sense of the tactics, and we'll actually play it. During the song, the Crimson Sun, just read the beginning here. At one stage, you need to have the players a PGM by playing Marco Polo song. I'll leave that up to you. During the song, the Crimson Sun, under the command of the Jealous Brother, attacks the city. At first, the living Crimson Sun warriors run forward and try to capture Janna and drag her away alive, taking her off the battle map into the darkness. The normal soldiers only attack and fight players if that player is not using an instrument. Using an instrument makes you invisible to living versions of the Crimson Sun soldiers because you are not at that moment in time. Think of it as phase shifting. Janna will, of course, run to the ruined west entrance and try to evade soldiers, ducking into the dinner table and all sorts of resourceful 10-year-old actions. Think Kevin McAllister from Home Alone. She will not go anywhere except the areas marked on the map. For example, she will not run across the canal or off into the desert. Allow Janna to evade soldiers as so the players can come to her aid. Feel free to have Janna kick shins for comedic effort on D20 and a 10 or higher, knocking the soldier to the ground. So it takes 2 living Crimson Sun soldiers to successfully grab Janna with a D20 roll of 15 or higher. Think of it as like a grab check, okay? Per soldier with no modifier. If they're within 5 foot square of her simultaneously, she'll, of course, cry out for help, and once grabbed, will wiggle free on a saving throw of 15 or higher every round. So once free, she'll run back to the players and cling to someone's waist for safety. It is the players at the campfire. Otherwise, she just runs away terrified into the red mark spot on the map inside the West Terrace building. So basically, once they grab her, they have to try to carry her off the map. So it's kind of like a capture the flag game. So here's an example. Let's say she's here, and say the first thing you want to do is you have 2 guys come running in here. Now, she's going to scream, go, oh no, we're being attacked, right? So you're going to have an initiative roll. So one of the first things you're going to want to do is you have your players here, and here's your everyone standing there, right? Let's just pull this off the screen. Let's take this off. We got 3 members of our party. Now, characters in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons get a bonus to their initiative roll based upon what their dexterity is. It's called this reaction attacking adjustment. So our fighter has +1 to his initiative roll. The thief has +1 to his initiative roll. And the cleric doesn't have any bonus at all. But a lot of times you want to kind of judge initiative based upon who's being attacked by who sees what. In this situation, we have 3 characters not engaged in combat, 2 baddies just running forward. If you're playing music, they don't see you. If you're not playing music and just standing around talking to her, they see you. So if they see you, they're going to run up and attack you first. So by the time they appear out of the darkness and you can see them and they see you, what you want to do is do an initiative roll. So let's do that this way. Let's use these grayish dice here, 3d6 for the bad guys, and let's use these black bones ones here, 3d6 for the good guys, which is your party. And I'm just going to remove some of this smoky bits off. Now, the way they do initiatives is all kinds of details in the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. What I like to do is what I call a group initiative. And a group initiative is us versus them. And just it's 3d6, high number wins. It's nothing special about rolling 3 6s, nothing special about rolling 1 1 1 1. I don't allow the individual reaction attacking adjustments happening because you're a group. There's a rules for surprise, but surprise is very, very complicated and very, very tricky. For new players, I just suggest you have them say, you try to roll as a group, and you try to roll as a group. Now, someone's going to need to be the designated roller because you got 3 of you. I'm going to make you guys roll as a group. Let's just say that whoever's playing with you, that the cleric decides she's going to roll. Now, just because the cleric player says she's going to roll doesn't mean you get to use any bonuses. Now, she doesn't have any, so they're just going to go ahead and roll her. You tell them, roll 3d6. So she's got a 5, a 6, 7, 8, 9, and a 10, 11, 12. And I'm going to roll 3 for the bad guys, these 2 Crimson Sun warriors that come whipping over the field. And we'll describe what they look like and everything. What's their number? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you have a 10 over here, right? And we had a 12. So this group wins. So that means you get to move first. And the way that D&D works is you get to move and attack, or you get to cast a spell, or you get to move away, or doing some other action. A wide variety of actions, not controlled by any specific rules. It's not like stride and strike and all this kind of stuff that you have in Pathfinder. It's all spelled out for you. You can do anything inventive that you want to within reason. So let's say, for example, that the warrior said that, who wants to go first in the party. They can just say, well, you know what? I'm going to let the warrior go first. Maybe the cleric, and your party determines who's going to do what in what order. Your group one, who wants to do something first? It could just be randomly picked. It doesn't matter. If you want to say, well, who has the best dexterity? Let's do it that way. It's not a written rule, but let's just say who has the best dexterity. Well, we got a 16 dexterity on our Magic Thief, we got a 11 dexterity on our Cleric, and we got a 16 dexterity on a Fighter. So you could say, okay, well, I want the Fighter and the Thief to roll 1d6 each and see who wins. So here's the Fighter's roll 4, here's a 2, so the Fighter gets to go first. That is another house rule. You just determine who gets to go first, because sometimes someone else wants to go first. So say the Fighter decides that this is here the Real the Wanderer, that he wants to charge forward and choke this point here. Now, you can't stand off grid, but he wants to move forward. So the way the D&D rules are, you have time. And by the book, 1 full minute, okay, not 6 seconds, is 1 melee round. What I like to do, and I suggest you do the same thing to keep it compatible with other game systems, is use a 6-second melee round, which is what used to be called a segment. So in the old version of the game, right, in AD&D, in the original version, you would have movement rates. And if you look on the character sheet, you see it says 12 inches. Now, in the original version of D&D, an inch was 10 feet. Now, we're using a 1-inch grid that means 5 feet. So let's do some math here in our head here. You can modify this to suit, but here's how it would work. In 1 melee round, you could move 12 inches, which is 120 feet, which would be completely off this board. That's completely unreasonable for close range melee combat. If you were just running, if that was something that was not being controlled out of combat, sure, that's kind of like the maximum running speed you can run. In 1 minute, you can run 120 feet. Now, how far is 120 feet? It's 40 yards. A football player runs a 40 in 5 seconds or less. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense because that's a leftover wargaming rule. So let's just take the 12-inch number and the time number and figure out what would be more reasonable. Let's say we did accept the fact, to keep all things equal, that the standard human movement rate is 12 inches, which is really 120 feet in 1 melee round. Let's divide that by 10. That means in 1 segment, which we're going to use for a melee round, one round is now going to equal 6 seconds. And you would technically only be able to move 12 feet, which only means, but each one of these grids is 5. So we're going to give you the extra 3 and say 3. So a normal human character in the game, in AD&D, at my table, can move 3 squares when they're actively in combat. Now, you may have seen when I was playing the Glacier Rift or Frost Giant Jarl that I let players move much, much further. But I think for teaching new players, keep it kind of simple like this so they can say, okay, 12 inches means 120 feet in a minute, so I can move about 12 feet in 6 seconds, so let me just round that off to 15. So now I also think it's okay to do it diagonally. This is one thing that's very different. In Pathfinder, they're like, this costs 1, this costs 2, this costs 1, this costs 2. If you want to keep it simple and not get too excessively complicated, you could do like to do in Warhammer 40k, where you take a tape measure, you just measure the distance, but we're going to use the grid and we're just going to say, listen, you can move 3 squares. So we can go 1, 2, 3. Now you're like playing chess, right? It's like moving the rook. It's like moving the pawn. And so he went first. Now who gets to go second? Well, let's say the thief guy, what is he going to do? Let's say I want to move, I can move 1, 2, and I want to try hide in shadows. Now, that's a pretty smart move, but he's right next to a column, and this is a light source, right? So there actually would be shadows cast kind of like this, but there's a light source over here hitting him a little bit. It's really up to you if you want to give them a penalty. In this situation with new players, I'm going to say go ahead and give me a hide in shadows check, which once again is going to be percentile dice like this, right? So we take a look at our rogue. And what is his hide in shadows chance, which is HS, 48%. Now here's another house rule I like to do. Let's roll first and I'll tell you the outcome. This is a 24. 24 means he successfully concealed himself in the shadows. These characters, these enemies, do no longer see him. It's like he just took a side step and just out of view. They don't know whether he ran off. They don't know whether he jumped down. They know he's not in the light, and they don't see him. If they were getting ready to shoot melee weapons, missile weapons at him, or cast a spell, no matter what happens, they consider him off the battlefield. They don't see him anymore. He's not invisible. They just are not aware of him and actively seeing him. Here's an example. You're sitting in a football stadium or you're in a basketball game, and you look to your left, you see some people. You look to your right, you see some people. And you look down to the left, you see some people. Now you start watching the basketball game, but off to your left, some guy takes a Coke and takes a sip out of it. It's kind of like he's hidden in shadows. He's in your peripheral vision, but you're not really looking at him. You don't really notice what he's doing. You don't really notice that he's turning and looking at you. Kind of think of that. Now imagine him doing that shrouded in darkness and being crouched down. You wouldn't see him. It's like trying to hide, like hide and go seek. All right, long story. Let's say that our rogue had rolled 94. Now, our thief, what I do this as my house rule is you think you're concealed, but you're not. Now, you made some smart move here by trying to get behind an object, but ultimately, if combat happens, this guy runs along here, you aren't going to be able to backstab or surprise attack him because he actually sees you. He might actually determine to attack you. But since you're attempting to conceal yourself, I'll even give you a chance. Like when the guy comes running by, he's not going to divert his attention and try to go get you because he thinks you're hiding and trying to get away. So all the complexity is really a house rule. None of that is written in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook or in the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you want to play it by the book, you can do it your way. If you do it this way, it will feel intuitive to players who've never played before. The last person that can do something is our cleric. Now, if you're playing a cleric, you think to yourself, okay, I'm kind of a force of healing. I've got a couple of versions of Cure Light Wounds 2 remembered. I've got Bless, Create Water, Command. We haven't been in combat yet. We don't know how hard to fight these guys are to fight. What are they even wearing? What kind of gear do they have? You might want to make the kind of tactical decision before you even do anything. So what do we have these guys wearing? Well, we have two enemies here. We have the alive version of these Crimson Warriors and a dead version. So they're kind of ghostly, but the alive ones, we're going to need to adjust to match the group skill and power. Hit points, adjust to match the group skill and power. And to hit AC 0, adjust to match the group skill power. But they're wearing chainmail and have spears and scimitars. So just describe them. It's almost like this other picture we saw earlier of Tanan. See these guys in the background? Spears, scimitars, turegs, things wrapped over their head, maybe wrapped in red. So what you need to do here is you need to adjust these values to work with your players. So here's how we're going to do that. All our players AC 5, AC 4, AC 4 for the cleric, AC 5 for the thief. So you kind of want these guys to have weaker AC than the party, right? Because you want the party to kind of be able to hit them. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to arbitrarily pick a second page. And I'm just going to say that a typical live Crimson Sun warrior. So I'm going to lower their armor class to a higher number. I'm going to make their armor class 7. Now, if you want to, what you could do is say, my characters, they're all about level 5, 6, and 7. So you could go through the monster manual and say, what would be a good monster that's around level 5, 6, and 7? So you could look for monsters and say, you want to look at the hit dice number, right? So let's just close this down here so you can see the monster manual a little bit better. You may want to flip through flip through the monster manual and try to find something that's on par with something that level. Not dragons, not earth elementals. What do we got down here? What about a gargoyle? A gargoyle hit dice is 4 plus 4. That seems pretty reasonable. If you've played the game before, you know that a gargoyle's pretty nasty. But these guys have an armor class of 5 because they're made out of stone. That's a little tough. Let's make them a little weaker than that. A ghoul, armor class is 6. That's kind of like an undead creature, but these guys are alive. In fact, I wonder if we could just use the values for like an elf or a man. Let's go back here and find... Let's take a look at a goblin. Here's a halfling, armor class 7. So let's, they're not really halflings, they're probably men. Let's see if we can find something that's a little bit closer to what we're talking about. Here's R, pixies, ogre magi's, O, minotaur, merman, merchant, pilgrim, dervish nomad. Oh, that'll work. Okay, great. So what we got for dervish nomads? Hit dice, 1 to 6 hit points. We're not going to use that. We need the armor class number. What do we have for an armor class? C below, based upon what they're wearing. All right. So let's do this. They're wearing chainmail. We said that before. Now we looked at our player's handbook and we saw the different chainmail numbers and what that means. So you go to the armor section and you say, okay, well, they were just wearing chainmail. Leather or padded with a shield? Nope. Studded leather, ring mail, and shield. It's the 6. Scale mail or plus shield or chainmail. So let's just say AC 5. So we're going to make the living guys AC 5. Now, how many hit points do they have? The players in our party have hit points of like 58, 48, and 43. And we know that we want them to attack a lot of these guys. We want them to just wipe out a whole bunch of them, kind of like Conan the Barbarian in a Savage Sword, the Conan Barbarian comic book. In fact, I'll show you one. Hang on. So they went back years and years and years later, and they reprinted these old classic Marvel versions of the Conan the Barbarian. So they're black and white. They're beautifully done. They're really, really old. The Scarlet Citadel. They're really cool stuff in here. And you can look through here and get an idea of what we're talking about. So you're talking about guys that have this kind of armor on, lots of Roman leather armor and things like that. We've had chainmail, and we will have this kind of look and feel to our enemies, right? They're just good old-fashioned soldiers. There's really nothing too incredibly scary about them, if you know what I'm trying to say. Let's just go to our little tabletop camera, and let's pull up a closer view of this so you can see what I'm talking about, right? So we're just going to use this as a point of reference. So here's some shots here. Where's some shots of some soldiers fighting? Let's go down to here. All right, here's a little battle scene here, right? We're coming to fight a bunch of baddies and stuff like that, right? So you're talking about guys that kind of have this look and feel going on with them. So let's just give them this armor class of just wearing the chainmail. And let's get the camera down here closer so we can see what's going on. And let's think about their hit point number. So what's a good hit point number for these guys? So we're going to hide this camera real quick. I'd like for them to be around, I'm going to make them around 15. And here's how I'm coming up with that number. I'm just using my judgment here, right? The reason why I say 15 is I want them to be good old soldiers. They're not elite killing machines. They're not super powerful. They're just dervish nomad kind of men-at-arms soldiers. So I'm going to give them about 15 hit points, armor class 5, and I'm going to make them as if they are level 2 fighters. Level 2 fighters. So now that I know they're the level 2 fighters, and I got kind of this basic layout of what they are, I can look up on the Dungeon Master's guide or the DM screen and say, what does it take as a level 2 fighter to hit armor class 0? So level 2 fighter needs armor class 0 needs a 20. So we're going to call this Thaco, it needs a natural 20. All right? Now, we got 2 of these. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So here's a guy with 15 health. Here's a guy with 15 health. So far, so good. All right. And here's our player's health over here. We'll keep that off the screen for now. So, our thief hidden shadows. Our cleric's in her back. She sees these 2 guys come running up. Our warrior guy's moved up 3 spaces to the front. He's getting ready to block things. What does our girl want to do now? What's her chance to do something? What is she going to do? So if I was her and I saw these guys running up just wearing chainmail, I probably wouldn't be too terribly worried about what they can and can't do. In fact, I'm going to try to turn this on so you can see this a little bit better. I wouldn't be too terribly worried about what their potential is, right? Get this ugly stuff out of the background. So I think for her, clerics are very, very good at meleeing actually in first edition, in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just going to position herself. I'm going to have her move 1, 2, 3 to here, and Jana is then going to move last, so she's going to 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have her move 4 because she's faster. She's a little kid. So now we have a situation where we have these guys come in here. It's their turn. So their movement rate, as we go back to our Crimson Warrior layout here, we can see what they were. The movement rate we have for them is 12. So they move the same movement rate as people. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now they're here. The next turn happens. It's the same order. So now everyone can move in the same order. So I'm going to go 1. I'm going to wait here. I don't want to walk in the water. And she goes 1, 2, 3. So she's going to block this. He's going to block that. The rogue's going to wait here, or the thief. Jan's going to move 1, 2, 3 into the building. Let's move this like that so you can see this a little bit better. You can actually turn it this way if you want to for fun. Whoops, sorry about that. I'll turn it a little bit better so you can see the actual fight. They're going to try to hold out here and fight right there. So what do you want to have happen next? So we've got this fight happening here. We'll do a close-up. You're going to hold here. They're going to come to you 1, 2, 3. Now what we can do if you wanted to is say that this guy is going to attack the warrior and this guy's going to attack the cleric. We could roll for initiative again. Now they've closed to melee range. But what I'm going to say, this is kind of my house rule and this kind of stuff, is because these guys didn't use their full movement and they kind of waiting for the onslaught, I'm going to let them attack first. Okay? So in essence, I'm going to let the warrior and the cleric attack with melee weapons first because these guys are kind of charging on them because they've laid down and waited. They didn't use their full movement that turn. So they're waiting for the attack to come. So we don't need to do any initiative rolls. All we need to do now is some rolls to hit. So let's go ahead and get some numbers out, hit some D20s out here. So this is where it's good to have this little cheat sheet here, right? We need to have the to hit AC 0 numbers on there. If you look at the character sheets, we've got those written down. So for our fighter, he needs the AC 0 to hit AC 0 to hit AC 0. What does he need? So he only needs a 15. And our thief only needs a 19. That's actually pretty nasty. He's down at the bottom. And what does our cleric need? Cleric needs a 15 as well. We should have jotted this down earlier, but we didn't. Okay, so now we know what it takes to hit. So let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. All right, so let's just say our warrior attacks first. He's take a swipe at the first guy in front of him. The warrior, our fighter, only needs a 15 to hit AC 0. Now remember I said the guy was armor class 7. That means you can start decreasing the number by the number of places away from AC 0. Okay, let's do that this way and write this out for you. So say here's AC 0, AC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away from hitting AC 0. If you needed a 15 to hit AC 0, you can take 7 away from that. It means he only needs an 8 to hit AC 7, right? Now we're using AC 5 for chainmail, so we really only have to do 5. So the difference between hitting AC 0 and hitting AC 5 is going to be a difference of 5, so it only needs a 10. That makes sense? So to hit AC 0, he needs a, let's put him on the screen so you can see him. To hit AC 0, he needs a 15, but he's only going to hit AC 5, so he needs a 10. So let's just roll to see if he hits. A 4, so he completely misses. Now, does he get multiple attacks per round? No, he does not. Let's try the cleric next and see what she needs. What does she need to hit AC 0? To hit AC 0, she needs a 15. She's trying to hit AC 5. She only needs a 10. Let's let her do her attack, and she rolls a 10. So she hits right on the money. That means she can do damage. Now, you usually say ahead of time what weapon you're going to use, but let's just assume she's using her +1 mace. Now, in this situation, the +1 mace would have given her a bonus of +1 to hit, but that's already been taken in consideration on the character sheet. Normally she would have needed a 16. So then all she does now is roll the damage that she does. So in this situation, the mace does 1 to 6 +1 because it's a magical mace. So the way D&D works, in third edition, they did an enhancement bonus and a bonus to hit number, but in first edition, if you got a +2 sword, it does +2 to hit and +2 damage. So we're going to roll a D8 because it does, actually, it's a 1 to 6, isn't it? Yeah, I'm mistaken. Use a 6-sided die, and we're going to add 1 to it. So 6 and 4 gives us 5. So we've got one bad guy here. Taking 5 away, he's down to 10 health. So that's this guy here. She's engaged with him. He's engaged with her. Now it's their turn to attack back. So, and we're not going to run through the entire combat count. I'm just going to give you a sense of how I do the basics on this. So these guys, to hit AC 0, they need a 20. Now, what's the armor class on our fighter? So our fighter's armor class is 5. So that it means they need the same kind of number, a 10, to hit him. Hang on just a half second. Somebody's escaping. All right, there we go. I think she's going to stay there. What do you think? Oh, that's all right. No problem. So that means, let's go back and make sure we got that clear. So the enemies, right, to hit AC 0, they need a 20. So to hit AC 5, they need to hit a 15. So to hit the warrior, they need a 15. So let's use a red die for the bad guys. Because our warrior is AC 5. They need a 15 or higher to hit him. There's a 16, so you would hit the warrior just fine, or the fighter, and the damage they're doing, you have to base it on the weapons they're holding, right? So let's just pull that up again. So we have in the description, we say they're using spears and scimitars. Let's just say that the all guys come rushing up with their spears first. Now, you're going to have to memorize these numbers over time, but let's take a look at the weapons section of the player's handbook. So how much damage does a spear do? There's a whole table that shows you all the damages for all the weapons. It's in the player's handbook, page 38. If you use the index, you'll find it really, really easily. So you find a spear, it only does, that's the speed chart. Where's the damage number? Speed, class of judgment, length, space factor. Here it is, when the purchase page. 1 to 6 and 1 to 8 versus a large opponent. So it only does 1 to 6 damage. We'll just roll this. It does 3 damage. There's no additional bonus. So then what you want to do is, as a dungeon master, you want to keep track of how much damage people have taken. So our fighter took, what, 3 damage? So that puts his health down to 55. And then the second guy gets a chance to attack the cleric. Now, what does the guy need to hit AC 0? Let's pull the cleric up again. She's AC 4. They need a 20 to hit AC 0, so take 20 and subtract 4. That means they only need a 16 to hit her. So you get to roll a d20. They need a 6, so that's too low because you got to roll higher than the number you need to actually hit. So this guy takes a swipe at her with a spear and completely misses, whether she blocks or evades or whatever. And this guy here took a swing here and just cut the warrior just slightly, the fighter. So now we have what I call an ask of everyone else in the table. Everyone's exchanged blows. This guy had in shadows anticipating the rest of the group here. Let's see what he wants to do now. So you turn to your thief. You say, okay, everyone's exchanged blows. I'm going to give you a chance to make the next move. He said, well, you know what? I'm already hidden in shadows. I want to try moving stealthily and quietly back behind everyone this way, all the way around here without going in the water. I want to backstab one of these guys. So backstab is a really crazy move. You can see right off the bat his plan, he's moving really, really far. But everyone's engaged in combat and melee. So normally you would say, well, you can only move 1, 2, 3. But he's not engaged in combat, so he can move quicker. So I'll allow him to move twice his distance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, jump the wall, 6. So by the time everyone exchanged blows in 6 seconds, he's already right here. In fact, he could just, in the next round, he'd go 1, 2, 3, 4 and attack this guy. So let's say the opening of the next round, he's going to come out of the shadows, jump down off the platform, and attack the first guy from behind. Now, there's complex rules for determining what the armor class number is when someone's being attacked from behind and all that kind of stuff that you can get into later. But for right now, let me give you a quick little crash course on how backstab works. So what you want to have happen is you want the thief wants to actually do what he's called a backstab. He could just attack from behind. Attacking from behind is fine. Let's go to the class section. And let's just go right to the thief in our player's handbook. So you get down to the thief. He's on page 26. Now, it starts at the very bottom, so you probably just go to the next page. They have abilities called backstabbing, right? And every class in every game has different ways to do things. So how does it actually work for here? Well, let's take a quick look here, right? Picking locks, opening locks, those are all the thief abilities. Secondary function, listen to doors, detect sounds, extending stairs. Thieves can, on language, these are able to read languages, decipher magical writings at level 10. That's not really working. This is their abilities, the thief functions. So you're saying to yourself, well, I thought they get to backstab. How does that work? On the DM screen, you see right here the attack matrix for thieves and assassins. In fact, let me show you where that is on the Dungeon Master Guide. If you go to the Dungeon Master Guide, the same exact tables are in this DM screen or in the Dungeon Master's Guide as well. If you turn to about page 74 in a Dungeon Master's Guide, you see the same thing. I've got a DM screen copy here, right? And I got oh, that's the wrong book. There we go. A Dungeon Master Guide here. So the DM screen looks this is the Dungeon Master's Guide version. Here's the DM screen. So the attack matrix for thieves and assassins. Here's what it says. Thieves and assassins, double damage from a surprise backstab. Tiny little footnote, A. Thieves and assassins, triple damage from surprise backstab. Tiny little note, B. Thieves and assassins, quadruple damage from surprise backstab. Tiny little note, C. If you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it says the same exact thing, right? So here's the A from levels 1 to 4. Here's the B from levels 5 to 8. Here's the C from 9 to 12. So in this case, what do we have? We have level 5 magic user, level 7 thief. So what does that mean in terms of what he could do from backstab? Well, he falls between the level 5 and 8 range. And when you're playing the thief, you'll memorize this stuff. So between level 5 and 8, if he scores a hit and it's considered a surprise backstab, which in my mind means you're attacking someone unaware from behind, only the first hit, because once you hit them once, they're now aware of you. You're no longer surprising them anymore. And because you're hidden in the shadows, you move silently, no one ever saw you. We didn't do a move silently check because there's too much noise going on. He gets to roll the hit. And if he misses, that chance to do that backstab is completely gone because the enemy hit his armor or whatever. He's now aware of your presence. So it's really important that the care of the apprentice lands a hit on this one opportunity. And this is like being a little hobbit burglar in the Lord of the Rings online. All right, so here we go. We're going to use this blue die to roll to hit. He's hitting from behind. So what does he need to hit this guy? These guys are armor class 5, right? He needs a 15 to hit AC 0. That means he only needs a 10 to hit this guy from behind. Now, is the guy defending because of his armor? He's just wearing chainmail. So there's no additional dexterity bonus. He's not really armor class 4 or 3 or 2 because he has a higher dexterity. Look on the character sheet for the thief magic user. Do you see what armor he's wearing? It's not written here, but if you look in the original version of the actual Hidden Shrine Tomoe-shan, you'll see that the thief, where is he at? Care of the Apprentice. What is he wearing? He's wearing a leather jerkin, plus he has a dexterity bonus. Attacks from behind or above negate the bonus on attack of AC 8. That's an interesting rule. They added attacks from behind negate the bonus on attack of AC 8. So he's wearing leather armor, right? So to hit this guy from behind with leather armor, his armor class would be much higher. But because he has a high dexterity bonus, as you can see this defensive adjustment of -2, his armor class would normally be higher. It would be 7. But because he has high dexterity, he's able to evade being struck more. Imagine someone be like a good MMA fighter, a good boxer like Floyd Mayweather, and be able to box and move out of the way. So getting on to the moment of truth here, trying to backstab this guy, but there's no dexterity bonus modifying the defender's armor class. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the swing. So what did he need again? He's hit an AC 5. He normally only needs a 15. What does he need normally? He normally needs a 19 to hit, a 19 to hit AC 0. He needs a 14 or higher for double backstab damage. Come on, let's do it. A 1. So this is a rule that I use a lot. I call it a flub. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they have like a critical fumble deck. Here's what I consider a flub. When you make a flub and doing a backstab, it means you screwed the attack up so horribly that something dumb happened. It doesn't have to be something that puts you at a tremendous disadvantage, but imagine this. He takes his weapon, he takes his short sword, and he thrusts it as hard as he possibly can, try to hit this guy from behind, but when he does it, he completely misses and bumps into both of them because he's lunging forward, right? He's backstabbing. He's not backslashing, he's backstabbing. And by doing so, he bumps into both of these enemies. Now, this is where in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons you can make things really, really interesting. Since these guys are soldiers, I'm going to have them both stumble and turn to partially face the thief, and I'm going to take away his initiative the next round. When they get their chance to attack, I'm actually going to determine by percentage chance whether they move their position to deal with the guy behind him or whether they actively defend or turn and attack the original targets. These are the subtleties about AD&D you can do to make it more tactical that's not normally in place there. Hang on just half a second. Go ahead. You can go. All right. Let's get back to it here. Sorry about that. Somebody wanted to escape the room. Get me out of the studio. Or we're coming back in. All right. Sorry about the delay. All right. So this is something that's not in the rule book. This is the kind of things you want to do as a dungeon master, make things feel like someone really happened. If someone came and tried to stab you from behind and they completely missed you, they'd bump into you. And when they bump into you, what are you going to do? You're going to turn and make sure you're not going to hit you again from behind. So that's his attempt. He failed. He took a step forward. He's out of position. He's almost inside their square. Both these guys are going to half turn, and I'm going to determine with a random die roll where they turn back to defend against this attacker or take a step back, or what are they going to do. So now that that's all happened, let's go back to the original initiative order of things where the fighter goes first, then the cleric gets to attack, then these two guys get to attack, and then our rogue character gets to attack, or our thief. So the fighter sees this guy turning his back. He's going to hit him from behind. I'm nice. I'm just going to give you an extra +1 to hit the guy from behind because he's actively turning his back towards you. Now, there isn't an armor class penalty. He doesn't have a high dexterity. Whoops, sorry about that. He doesn't have a high dexterity or anything like that. But in this situation, I think he's actively removing his guard. He's not going to be able to parry or anything like that. Turning your back and dodging while in combat is one thing, but this guy's actively turning his back like Floyd did to Connor, right? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give him another bonus to hit. So let's get our fighter back up here. Here he is. So his number to hit AC 0 was 15. To hit these guys that were AC 5, he only needed a 10. I'm going to give him an extra bonus of 1, so he needs a 9 or higher. That's an 8, so he just barely misses. So he takes a swipe at this guy and just barely misses, like chinks off his arm or his shoulder blade or what have you. Now the cleric's going to do an attack as well. So the cleric notices that the previous guy has been damaged. This guy has already been damaged, and the thief tried to backstab him. So she's going to change targets without incurring any kind of attack of opportunity. That's something that doesn't even happen in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And she's going to take a swing at that guy too. So once again, you want to look at what her to hit AC 0 number is, right? Her AC 0 number is 15, and she's hitting these Crimson Sun dudes. I'm just going to put these on here so they kind of maybe get picked up by the camera a little bit. They're AC 5. So for her to hit she needs a 15. You're going to hit AC 0. This is armor class of 5. That means she only needs a 10. Now, I'm not going to give her the bonus to hit because, like the fighter, because this guy does not turn her back to her. So she only needs a 10. An 8, so she misses him as well. So now, here's where it gets nasty. These two enemies get a chance to determine what to do. Because they're military men-at-arms, and this guy is the one that tried to get attacked, I'm going to say that this guy's going to take a step back, and then he's going to turn to attack him. So, and this guy here, he's going to take a step this way and turn to attack him. So they're both going to try to attack the thief simultaneously. So let's see what we got here. What does it take to hit the thief if you are one of these militia guys, these Crimson Sun warriors? So let's just pull that up again real quick. So you got this Crimson Sun warrior. This is what they're trying to attack the thief. Let's get the thief's character sheet up there and get that out of the way because we made up our own numbers for them, right? So the thief is AC 5. So for them to hit AC 0, they need a 20. So you only need a 15 to hit him. So we're going to use this red die, this red D20. In fact, we'll use these two black ones. Two black ones are bad people. This guy's going to attack him, needs a 15. This guy's going to attack him, needs a 15. We're going to roll both at the same time. A 6 and a 13. So both of them attack them, and neither one of those strikes land. So in essence, the thief was able to defend himself, and I'm actually going to allow the thief to attack back. Now, these guys have both attacked him, and they're going to need to put him on a square here. He's attacked him. Thief's in this square here. It's his turn to do something. What is he going to do? I'm going to have the thief he's going to turn his back. I'm going to have him actually attack this guy in the face. Now, there's some rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide about flanking. Let me see if I can find them for you real quick. If you look on page 69, there's rules about being on a grid and when you turn your flank. And basically what they say is it reduces your armor class. So if you look at the grid down in the lower right-hand corner down here where my mouse cursor is, I'm just going to highlight this real quick. You see this area down here? So in this situation, you have front, 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 defender, front, and then rear, rear, rear. So if someone turns their back to you, you would give them reduce the amount of armor class they have. So in this situation, front, 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 back, back, back. So the thief has got his back actively turned to this guy now. It would make sense if he doesn't have as good of an armor class as he would before. Now, what is his armor class made up of? Remember, we saw this in his dexterity is 16. He had -2 to his armor class because of his dexterity bonus. We're going to take that away. In 3rd edition, they would have things called flat-footed. Now, there's no flat-footed rules in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase his armor class, which means it's easier to hit him to 7, okay? So these guys only need a 20 to hit AC 0. They only need a 13 to hit him from behind this one guy, okay? But, so in this situation, actually, we already rolled both these numbers, didn't they? And this 13 then actually hits him. So that's going to do damage to him. Or did I get out of order? Let's pretend that's what happened anyway. Just ignore the order. All right. So this is using a spear. We're going to do 1d6 damage. 5 damage to our thief. So you want to be able to keep track of that. So your thief is going to take 5 damage. He is at hit points 43. If you take 5 away from that, that puts him at 38. Okay? Now we've got this other guy missed completely. Now everything has reset. Now everyone's in a defensive position. Everyone's aware of each other. No one's being backstabbed anymore. No one's losing their flat-footed bonus or anything like that. The thief is just going to be able to take 1 step back, and now we can roll for initiative again if we wanted to, but I'm going to keep the same actual fight order that we had from the very beginning. Now, this 1 step back thing is something I like to do. If you were fighting someone and you knew somebody took a swing at you from behind and hit you, you would automatically take a step. I would probably say, do you want to take a step back this way? Do you want to take a step back this way? Take a 1 step without incurring kind of movement. I'm going to actually just have the thief take 1 step back this way so you can actively defend against both of these guys. So the order was that the warrior, and then the cleric, and then the thief, all attacking this one guy at once. All right, let's do that a roll for us next. We don't need this shadow in here anymore. So what did our warrior need to hit AC 0? Our fighter only needs a 15. He only needs a 10 to hit this guy. Let's give him a swing. Let's use the blue die for our fighter. Okay, there's a 19. That's great. That's almost double damage. In 3rd edition, they'd have a thing called threat range. And the threat range would be if you're using a certain kind of weapon, if the weapon does certain rolls going towards the 20 number, you could actually do a critical hit. But we're not doing any critical hits here unless we have a natural 20. So he hits. So we need to see what kind of damage he's going to do. He's using a longsword. It's 1 to 8 damage. And because it's a magical it's not magical, he gets +1 damage because of his strength. So we need to get an 8-sided die, which looks like this. Right? And we're going to roll this right here. So we got a 1 + 1. That's 2, better than nothing. Not absolutely fantastic, but as you remember, this guy already took damage before, so we're going to drop him down 2 points down to 8. So these first 2 guys are damaged. So now that's good with the cleric. What did the cleric need to hit this guy? The cleric need is trying to hit him with to hit AC 0 of 15. We'll put her character sheet up for you real quick just so you can see it again. She needs a 15. You stay on the right-hand side where her portrait is. These guys are AC 5. That means she only needs a 10. She needs a 10 to hit this guy that's damaged. A 1. So this is a flub situation. So what's going on here? You've got this guy is behind her now, but he was attacking the thief before. He might take a chance to take a swing at her. She takes a swing with her mace and just gets off balance. I'm going to make her make a 1 step here and almost collide with the other thief, but she completely misses, but she's out of position. So she now actually has her back completely turned away. Now, as a dungeon master, I can determine that. In my mind, if you miss completely with your right hand and you swing, you're going to be off balance. You could take a step. I'll make her take a side step right there like that. So now the thief gets to go. Let's have him attack this guy, and then these 2 guys get to attack next. All right, so what did our thief need to hit these guys? They're AC 5. Our thief only needed a 19 to hit AC 0, so he needs a 14 to hit AC 5. So we're looking for a 14 or higher, a 2. So he takes another swing and doesn't hit. Now it's these guys' turn. This guy's damaged. Is anyone else here damaged? This is where you want to kind of be smart as a dungeon master. Of the party, only the thief has taken damage. So this guy's going to focus on attacking the thief. So these guys, to hit AC 0, they need a 20. But now the thief is actively defending and facing him. Okay, he has his full armor class, which is AC 5. Now, if he had his back turned, it was like this, he'd be at AC 7. But now he's at AC 5. So that means he's going to need a 15 or higher to hit him. Okay, so we'll use the black dice for the bad guys. 15 or higher. A 7, so he completely misses. And this guy here is going to attack the cleric from behind because it's just an opportunistic situation. So let's take a look at the cleric's armor class real quick. Does she have any kind of dexterity? Her strength is 15, intelligence is 14, wisdom 16, dexterity is 11. So nothing from her armor class is coming from her ability to move and dodge and evade and block or anything like that. So, but I'm going to give a bonus of 1 for him to attack her from behind because if it was a bonus of 2 for her because of her dexterity, I would give him a bonus of 2. But this is because she's just kind of flat-footed in a way, right? So I'm just going to give him a bonus of 1 to hit. So her armor class is 4, which is much lower. So to hit AC 0, these guys need a 20. To hit armor class 4, they need a 16. But since she's hitting her from behind, right, with the flanking rules, like I was showing you this here in the Dungeon Master's Guide, he's only going to need a 15, right? Okay, so let's run through that one more time, make sure we didn't make a mistake. So to hit AC 0, these guys need a 20. She's AC 4, that means they need a 16. But because she's got her back turned, they'll need a 15. So we're going to roll 1 roll here for the bad guys against the cleric. A 17. So they actually hit her from behind with a spear. That does 1d6 damage. We're going to roll that right here. A 3, hit her on top of the head in the process. A 3, so there's no bonus to the damage or anything, so we want to make sure we keep track of that. I'm just going to set that down here. She took 3 points of damage. This 48 now becomes a 45. So this is the process of how things go. Now, if you are a very hardcore AD&D player, you may be stunned at the number of house rule type things that I do in the game. because I like the game to feel as if there are interesting dynamics that were explored in rule sets from other versions of the game, while at the same time I want a lot of common sense, a lot of footsteps, a lot of footwork, a lot of weight balance shifting. I like to use the basic concept idea of flanking that you have in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is not used in the same way at all in Pathfinder or any other version of the game. I like people to tactically position themselves like a war game without changing the numbers. So the numbers to hit are the same, right? The only thing that I'm actually modifying a little bit is the positioning and making up a couple little subtle numbers using my judgment to take advantage of where someone is. The other house rule I'm doing is where people are taking one steps to position themselves. We're engaged in melee. We have a movement rate. As long as I don't turn and run away, okay, I can move. So here's an example. This next round, right? Let's go back to the beginning. Let's say here's the warrior, here's the cleric, here's the thief, here's the warrior. Everything resets. The warrior decides to take one step because remember he can move 15 feet and hit this guy from behind. I'm going to give him a bonus of 1 to hit, like we just did when this guy took a swing at the cleric. That's tactically thinking. That's using these kind of positioning rules that we have here. If these enemies had a high dexterity, then you would reduce their armor by even further. So to hit AC 0, our fighter only needs a 15, but these guys are AC 5, he would only need a 10, but I'm giving him an extra bonus of 1, so now he only needs a 9, all right? So he hits with a 16, so now he's going to do decent damage this time. So it's a long sword, so it's a 1 to 8 damage. Let's get our 8-sided die back up here, and we're going to add 1 to it. So it's only 2, so it's not a lot. This thing's taking some damage here. Now, I want to talk real quickly. This puts it down to 6. This guy's been focus fired. Do you notice how the group is focus firing this one guy? They're trying to get him out of there. Even though they're doing things like exposing their back and stuff, the sooner he's dead, the better. Now, in the battle, as a DM, you may want to do things like, what's going on with her in the background? She's just cowering in fear and hiding on the table. No one's doing anything to her. Now, as you remember the rules and the way the dungeon was written up, you could have, if you wanted to, I'm going to turn this way real quick. You could, if you wanted to, I could have made guys jump in the window and come grab her where you're squealing in terror and you're like, oh no, she's being attacked. What should we do? In fact, why don't we do that in a minute or two, but not just yet, because our new players have just gotten the groove down for the combat, and we're just going to focus on them for now, okay? So let's take a look at where we are with the warrior struck. He did damage. The cleric's going to attack. What does the cleric need to hit? There's no bonus for her to hit because he's facing her. So our cleric needs a 15 to hit AC 0. These guys are AC 5. She only needs a 10. So she needs a 10 to hit him with her mace. There's an 18. That's a good solid hit. Her mace does, in fact, let me get her sheet back up again. Her mace does 1 to 6 plus 1. So we're going to use this 6-sided die here. That's a 5. This thing was down to 6 health. So this is a rule, another house rule I like to use. When something gets down within 2 hit points, in this situation 1 hit points, it crumples to the ground and can no longer actively defend itself, and all its armor class is dropped by 2 to 4. In this situation, since the thing is just wearing chainmail, I'm going to actually say that the thing is pretty much dead. All it would take is for the cleric to hit it one more time and the thing would just crumple to the ground dead. So you can use that kind of ruling however you want. You could make the guy fight to the death until someone else nicks him for 1 more hit point. He had originally 15 health. Now he's all the way down to 1 health, right? 1 hit point left. He'd be staggering, bludgeoned from behind, stabbed in the back, chopped with a long sword, stabbed with a short sword. The guy's bleeding to death, really wounded, standing in the water, 1 hit point left. You know, all the cleric would need to do is take 1 more swing. If you wanted to make it exciting, you could say, this guy's crumples to his knees, he's almost unconscious, take another swing, give me a hit of 5 or higher to finish him off. She could roll a 4. She doesn't finish him off. Now the rogue or the thief has a chance, and the thief says, you know what, I'm not going to waste my attack on finishing this guy off. I'm actually going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to flank this guy and try to hit him from behind, but it's not a surprise backstab because the guy could see him coming, right? So he moved, and he's going to do a regular attack on this guy, but it's not flat-footed or any weird rules like that. So what we want to do now is to let our thief take an attack against this guy. This guy might actually even actively turn and face him, right? But I'm going to have him attack from behind. So our thief needs to hit AC 0 of 19. So we take away 5 from that to give us the 14. So if he rolls a 14 or higher, he's going to hit that guy. A 20, this is double damage. Now it's not a double backstab, it's just double damage. So let's get the thief's weapon back up here. Sorry, I wasn't doing that quick enough. So a short sword's only 1 to 6. He had no bonuses to damage for having high strength. It's not a magical short sword or anything like that. So we're going to get double damage in this after we add all bonus multipliers. If this was a +1 sword, we would say 2 + 1, then we double it. In this situation, it's just a regular weapon. It's 2, it's doubled, it's 4. So this is the first time this guy's been hit. This puts him down to 11 health, and I'm actually going to call this guy dead now because he's not going to live to the next exchange, that's for sure. So when someone's down on the ground, down to 1 hit point, I'm going to give him a free attack without it being his turn. I can actually have him, he can say, I'm going to go ahead and start moving this to attack this guy from behind, but on the way by, I'm going to swap that guy. Say, go give me a roll of 5 or higher to kill him. He rolls a 1 and maybe misses and loses his potential chance to hit him. I can have her just go ahead and take a swing and see if you can finish him. I did that already. This guy's still alive. I'm going to have him try to disengage and move away. The cleric's going to actually take a step forward and try to hit him. I'm going to let him take a swing at the cleric as he's actively defending himself and trying to back away. So this Crimson Fighter, what does he need to hit AC 0? He needs a natural 20. Her armor class is 4, if I'm not mistaken. That means he needs a 16 to hit her. He's really heavily wounded. I'm going to give him an additional penalty of 1. So he needs a 17 to hit her. A 14 he doesn't. Let's go ahead and have her finish him off. A 14 would hit him, and then he's dead. There he is, dead in the canal. So we kind of gimme putted this. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't take it too long. Wrapping up, finishing an enemy with 1 health, pretty wounded, backing away, actively defending itself, not unconscious. They're just going to get finished off if they get hit pretty easily. Doesn't even have to roll damage, it's over with. This guy rolled a 1 as he moved past, so I'm going to give him his regular attack against this character from behind, but I'm not going to give him any attacks from behind type bonuses. So let's get Real the Wanderer back up here. He's going to use his longsword and try to jam this guy in the back. Maybe take a swing at his neck or something like that. You don't do any called shots in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. But what you can do is say what you're trying to do to make it more dramatic, as if you're trying to do something powerful. Like, I may give you a penalty. I'm going to try to cut this guy in the back of the neck. But you can't lop someone's head off, if you know what I'm trying to say. All right, so for the fighter, let's see how that works out. He's going to take a swing at this guy. This guy's armor class is 5. The fighter to hit AC 0 is 15. He only needs a 10. We aren't giving him the bonus because he did a flub on the way out. So it's just making it 8. So he takes a swing and it just chinks off the armor. Doesn't do any damage. So now this guy's turn. He was facing this way, actually. I'm going to have him try and flee, right? So let's try him 1, 2, and 3. Now, there are no attack of opportunity rules in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. He's not wounded enough to be crumbling away like this guy. So he's actively defending as he's moving back, which means that everyone can actively engage and stay with him. So, but the thief gets to go first. So the thief gets the chance to be first. The fighter can't move and attack and then move again while he's fleeing, chasing this guy fleeing. So let's go ahead and let our thief take an attack. To hit AC 0, he needs a 19. These guys are AC 5. He needs a 14. Does an 8. So he takes a swing at him. The guy's still actively defending. Then I can have my cleric turn and go to 1 and take a swing from the side here. Where's our cleric need to hit AC 0? She needs a 15. She only needs a 10 to hit this guy. There's a 1. She completely flubs. I'm actually going to have her take a step and bump into the thief, so they are colliding each other and causing a block for the fighter. So the fighter has to go 1, 2, and 3 and attack from this side. Our fighter gets attacked. His armor class is... What has he got? Excuse me, not armor class. His roll to hit is a 15. He only needs a 10 to hit this guy. A 6, he misses. Now this guy can actually defend. I'm going to have him take a swing at the cleric who's off balance. I'm going to take away 1 point of hit point, 1 point of armor class from her. So her AC is 5. These guys normally need a 20 to hit AC 0. Pull away the 5 gives us to hit AC 5. Only needs a 15. So a 15 or higher, the bad guy's going to hit the cleric. A 16, he hits her easily. He uses his spear still. There's a 6. Let's just keep that number. So she takes 6 damage. Being out of position hurt her there. He could have missed her if he hadn't got that bonus because she was off balance in her previous flub. You see how fast I'm going? Things are getting faster and faster. So this 46 goes down to 39 now. So there's a lot of improvisation happening in here. I'm using a lot of personal house rules. I'm trying to keep things in a reasonable decision-making manner to make it dramatic with positioning and steps and combat and damage that feels like a real Hollywood fight, right? That's the goal. Now, if you played this by the book, it's actually not that fun. It's kind of fun, but it's not quite as fun. So these little subtleties I'm doing, like when you take a swing, where you are, how many steps you could take, are you actively defending, someone's at 1 hit point left, hitting someone from behind, trying to backstab. There's lots of heroism happening for our players here. And there's a lot of like not so good happening for our enemies, because these aren't NPCs. This isn't a heroic enemy that's level 6. This is like a man-at-arms that's like level 2. All right? So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of see how I roll a combat situation like this. Let's go back to our overhead view here and talk about some other things that could have happened that didn't happen in this one little scenario. So one thing we didn't do is, in this situation here, let's assume this is our new players fighting and never played D&D before, and now they're starting to see that, like, wow, you know, where I stand, can I take a step, can I do this, my DMs allow me to do that. When someone's backing away, actively defending, it's kind of like someone in a UFC fight, fighting as well. They're defending themselves, they're backpedaling. All those kinds of things are very realistic. People can understand those kinds of gameplay elements. It doesn't have to be a 1 full minute melee round. People don't need to be standing still and chopping at a block of hit points. When someone takes a swing and misses, they can be off balance. If they're doing a lunge, you can describe how the attacks actually happen, and bring it to life more. Other things that could have happened, right? We could have had other guys, like in our map. I'm going to pull this map up real quick and show you the combat map one more time, okay? So let's go back to this combat sequence. We had suggested that valid spawn spots are bad guys. They are trying to capture her. 1, 2, they could have come in here and grabbed her. What would have happened? Let's say they killed him, and then you get perfect time for there to be a scream, just like in a movie, right? She starts screaming. Let's say that these guys did a successful grab. Now, even though my rules said you need to roll 15 or higher, they don't even see this. I can hear her screaming, and they start moving, trying to drag her out the door. And you see her in the doorway screaming for help. Now, they can only move a 1 5-foot square, so they're going to move 1 5-foot square with her right here in tow. He's dragging her by the arms. He's dragging her by the legs. You guys get to try to engage. You're not engaged in combat. I would allow you to double your movement rate to catch up to them. So remember, we said you can move 12, which you rounded to 15. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, why did I double the movement rate? Because they're just running. They're not actively defending. They're just running over. So this is something in one of my other videos I experimented with once before. Now, if you did this by the book, if you did this with a by the book movement rate type thing, there's no way that if their movement rate was the same as yours, they would move 3, you'd move 3. They'd move 3, you'd move 3. They move 3, you'd move 3, and you would never catch them. There's a big difference between dragging a little girl screaming and kicking and screaming versus just running at full speed to try to stop something. Those are the kinds of personal judgment things you have the flexibility to do in Dungeons and Dragons that you don't have the flexibility to do in some later editions of the game. There are rules about movement, but it's all based on that 1 minute melee round. What you really want to have happening is this dramatic situation where everyone's closed the gap to try to help save Jana, right? In this situation, Jana Tanan. So these guys are trying to drag her away. They get to here. You can't take a swing and hit her. Maybe the next melee round, she tries to grab the girl to pull the girl free. She gets a chance to break free. We said if she rolls a 15 or higher on a saving throw per melee round, she gets a chance to break free. If she rolls a 10, she doesn't make it. The fighter gets a chance to swat this guy. You could say to yourself that, hey, let's put the close-up camera on this, right? Your house rule might be that if you hit any one of these guys, in fact, we'll turn it this way, right? If you hit any one of these guys, I'm going to say that's good enough. And put the light over here. That's good enough for you to make them drop her, right? Imagine someone run with a football and someone stabbed you with a short sword. You probably drop the football. So those are the kinds of little house rules that you can do to make a dramatic moment. If you're watching this as a movie and someone punched the bad guy in the face, he would let go of her and she'd jump down the ground and she'd probably jump into her arms. So she'd be like in your arms and he could attack him. You have whole melee combat happening over here. All right, and this video is really, really, really long, but I really want to go through this entire kind of like breakdown of how I like to run combat encounters, the things where I bend the rules, the elements of the game that I keep verbatim, the elements of the game that I change slightly. all to create kind of a fun, dynamic experience for the players, tailored to fit what their skills are. That's why I think you can take any content you have, any dungeon, any adventure, and just take those character stats, the enemy stats, adjust them to make it fun for your party so you can focus on the action and have fun with the action sequences and not worry about whether there's a total party wipe in the first melee round and things like that. And then what you may find yourself wanting to do is like, well, let me go read this chapter about the flanking stuff in the Dungeon Master's Guide a little bit more. Maybe I want to learn the house rule a little bit better. Let's just put this over here and we'll turn this off. Because we don't need to see a shot of an eraser, right? So maybe what you want to do is you're like, now that I played the game, this kind of wing it method, maybe you want to go in there and try to figure out exactly how backstab works, or exactly how assassinate works, or exactly how some of the rules work in 3rd edition. Maybe you want to include attack of opportunity in your game. The flexibility is really there for you. Maybe you want to really read into hit points and say, well, the hit points aren't really just health. They're more about how your ability to survive. Being at 1 hit point still means you can actively fight. You aren't bleeding to death. You're just like an MMA fighter using heart to fight. All right, I'm going to stop the video there. We're at 2 hours and 38 minutes today. Really, really long, but there's a lot of really cool stuff I wanted you to see. I want you to get a chance to see what it would be like to try and take those characters from another module verbatim, taken from the Hidden Shrine of Timoashan, bring them into our campaign that we had, set them up in a battle map, start playing the game, start doing some things with the game that are fun, thinking about combat positioning, thinking about rolls to hit, how to balance things, how to get players moving along, how to understand player psychology. Gosh, there's just so much detail in this episode. I hope that you find it valuable and really robust. It's been a long time since I've done an AD&D episode. I think I'm probably going to do more of these. If you like this or have any suggestions, let me know. If this is way too long for you, I can always break it up into sections. But I'd like to hear from you what works for you. Other than that, we'll leave it at that today, and we'll talk to you again real soon. And have fun gaming. Do it your way.